Hello. Beep, 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 'tis I. Right, okay, folks. This is for my Substack subscribers, this is the full advert-free 10-part NHS, EDI, DIE, look up at the queue, nonsense, all in one go. All right, you'll get the beginnings and the endings because it's all included in there. I'm too tired to edit it out. Thank you so much for supporting me, my paid subscribers. It's just great for you to do so. Come be a bloody warrior teacher. There's loads of you out there. I want you. Other than that, here's it all in one go if you want to watch it. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Hello. Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the Edijester. How is everybody today? Yes, we have seen the unseeable. We have heard the unhearable. And we have noticed the most noticeable in the ongoing court case and the wonderful commentary provided by Tribunal Tweets. If you haven't been watching, go and have a look, will you, for God's sake, because you're missing out big time, in which we have a doctor who appears to be utterly insane on every rational level, being exposed as, frankly, a nut job. Now, whether anything will come of this or not, I don't know. The GMC, which is the General Medical Council, seems to be a most peculiar body designed to protect the public from doctors who are errant or insane, and have said nothing. I've been to the website, Twitter, on the Twitter sites. Nothing, not a word. They haven't said, right, okay, we're investigating this arse. Is that because they need somebody to complain before they can investigate? I have no idea what's going on here. But I've never seen anything quite like it in my entire life. It is obvious that there is something seriously wrong. Now, it was intriguing because obviously, although we've all got our eyeballs, we've all got our peepers on the case of Dr. Upton, it actually is part of a much larger problem that many of us are aware of, but many people also are not. So it seems appropriate that we should I'm going to pull back a bit, and take a look at something over the next couple of days that I hope that you will find interesting, because it's fairly obvious that Upton, although being a complete twat, is not actually per se the problem itself. The problem itself is the NHS. And there's further evidence that the NHS is absolutely deranged on this matter in a recent video, which I will be discussing over the next few days. But before that happens, I want to take us back to 2024, to November of that month, 27th of November, in a piece written by Lee Jussim on the Unsafe Science Substack, where he is reposting an article from Colin Wright, who has Reality's Last Stand as his Substack. So there's links and everything that you'll need to this are in the Dubras as usual. So let's get started, because this relates. I'll explain as I go. Two leading media organisations abruptly shelved coverage of a groundbreaking study that went against their narrative. Now, this is because this groundbreaking study was on DEI/EDI, CSJ, all that nonsense that we need to eradicate from society completely. So as he says there, the post was written by Colin Wright and originally appeared in his Substack site. I'm going to go past that. But it is actually important to notice that this is research done specifically on the negative consequences of diversity, equity, and inclusion pedagogy, teaching, right, and rhetoric based on ideas promoted by Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo, whose work was quoted exactly in our experimental manipulations. I was planning to do a post on this, but this was so good I had little to add. Lee, now, you have to understand that Upton is an outgrowth of a particular bubo, which is the bubo is EDI, DEI. This is what we're seeing. I mean, that he's the flower of the rotten weed that is this terrible way of thinking. And part of that is also critical race theory. Now, I don't want to take away from the fact that we have to deal with this gender nonsense for 1 minute, but it's getting very hard to deny that the two things are connected, because they are. In a stunning series of events, two leading media organizations, the New York Times and Bloomberg, abruptly shelved coverage of a groundbreaking study that raises serious concerns about the psychological impacts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The study, conducted by a Network Contagion Research Institute in collaboration with Rutgers University, found that certain DEI practices could induce hostility, increase authoritarian tendencies, and foster agreement with extreme rhetoric. Upton, despite that being about gender and not race, is the absolute poster boy for that. With billions of dollars invested annually in these initiatives, public has a right to know if such programs, heralded as effective moral solutions to bigotry and hate, might instead be fueling the very problems they claim to solve. The decision to withhold coverage raises serious questions about transparency, editorial independence, and growing influence of ideological biases in the media. Now, the NCRI study investigated the psychological effects of DEI pedagogy, specifically training programs that draw heavily from the texts like Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. The findings were unsettling, though perhaps not surprising to long-standing opponents of such programs. Through carefully controlled experiments, the researchers demonstrated, this is, I think, absolutely fascinating, They demonstrated that any kind of oppressive, anti-oppressive, anti-racist, or in this case, anti-trans when it comes to this idiot doctor, consistently amplified perceptions of bias where none existed. Participants were more likely to see prejudice in neutral scenarios and to support punitive action against imagined offenders. In other words, what they're saying is that DEI, EDI just creates drones that believe something that's not true. Gosh. Does this reverberate with you? Is there echoes of Upton in amongst this? These effects were not marginal. Hostility and punitive tendencies increased by double-digit percentages across multiple measures. Perhaps most troubling, the study revealed a chilling convergence with authoritarian attitudes, suggesting that such training is fostering not empathy, but coercion and control. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me there isn't a reverberation between that idea and what Upton's up to, because he is the walking embodiment of coercion and control. The walking embodiment of it. The implication of these findings cannot be downplayed. DEI programs have become a fixture in workplaces, schools, and universities across the United States, with a 2023 Pew Research Center report indicating that more than half of US workers have attended some form of DEI training. This obviously, it costs a fortune to do this nonsense, and we've been doing it over here, but the NHS is probably the single biggest captured organisation, as you will see when I take us through some of their training over the next couple of days. Let's just jump ahead a bit here, right? The harm in question goes far beyond the scope of individual programs. Across multiple experiments, the study documented a consistent pattern. Exposure to anti-oppressive DEI rhetoric, these power oppression narratives of the intersectionalist mad people, it heightened participants' tendency to attribute hostility and bias to ambiguous situations. In one experiment, participants read excerpts from Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi, juxtaposed against a neutral control text about corn production. Afterwards, they were asked to evaluate a hypothetical scenario, an applicant being rejected from an elite university. Those exposed to the DEI materials were far more likely to perceive racism in the admission process, despite no evidence to support such a collusion. In other words, DEI programs are producing, EDI, all the crap that the NHS is doing, are producing people who are unable to perceive reality. That's the truth of it. They are unable to perceive reality. Okay? So, in other words, all of these things that are on this particular chart in front of you now, look at that. They saw the essay and they saw essentially something that had none of what we're seeing they're saying was there. How many microaggressions did the applicant experience? 35.4%. How much harm did the applicant experience? 25.5%. This was perceptions of racial bias in admissions between those exposed to anti-racist education material and the control group who weren't. Percentages reflect percent difference in mean scores between those who saw the treatment and the control. In other words, what we are seeing here is that EDI and DEI training makes people unable to perceive reality. And because they cannot perceive reality, they resort then, as Upton does with his nonsense, to unreality and coercive and controlling behavior to ensure that their narrative is the dominant one. And then we take them seriously enough for them to end up in an employment tribunal where they're able to say what they say. EDI and DIE and critical social justice and queer theory and all that nonsense that comes with it has to end. This may be about critical race theory that I'm showing you today, but the truth of the matter is, this is an entire ideology, the ideology of critical social justice. that makes people mental. There you go. Now, you let me know what you think, because I go and read the article, because it's really important that you do, especially because I'm going to bring you some stuff about the NHS tomorrow. Go read the article. I'll see you later. I got warrior teachers to look after. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for gawping. See ya. Hello.
Hope that I'm going to cover some stuff that you're going to find helpful. My name's Melanie. My pronouns are she and her. I sit within the corporate EDI team as my day job, and my gay job is I am the chair of the National NHS England Staff Network, LGBTQIA+ network. And just generally in terms of like EDI stuff, my sort of one of my specialisms is LGBTQIA+ awareness. I've been doing a lot of work in this area for quite a few years.
Beep, beep, beep. Welcome to the court of the Edijester. I hope you are all well. As I mentioned yesterday in my video in regards to the dangers of EDI, DEI and everything else that's attached to it, it is fairly obvious to me that we have a much bigger problem than simply Dr. Bloody Upton. So I went a look in. I went a look in to see what I could find, and I was sent a rather marvellous link to an NHS video. I've got this video, and over the next few days I'm going to take a look at it, and I hope you'll join me in that journey, because it may prove to be one that is fascinating. What I've discovered is shocking, and it illustrates a complete and absolute capture of the NHS, one that I fear will take primary legislation to put right. But I'll allow you to decide. As you see, I've already started off today by introducing you to the rather wonderful lady called Melanie Holloway. As you can see, pronouns she, her. In that short introductory clip, it affords us a bit of insight into the individuals who are controlling the narrative in the NHS and who are influencing clinical decision making, and therefore what happens to patients. Melanie is part of a network of individuals, the numbers of which I believe are in the thousands, and as can be seen here by this particular profile, is a British Award nominee, a British Diversity Award nominee, which seems to be one of these backslapping boondoggles. I've no idea what it actually is. And of course, like all of the people that do this, Melanie says views are my own and nothing to do with my employer, but it appears to me that all she does is repost garbage. I was interested to find out a little bit more about Melanie and what exactly are her clinical qualifications or medical qualifications to enable her to exert such influence over the NHS and therefore its practice. Unfortunately, I was left wanting. What I did manage to find was this. From Rocket Reach, Melanie Holloway holds a BA Honours in Humanities, i.e. this is a literature student, or somebody with a degree in literature, from the University of Hertfordshire. In other words, if this is the right Melanie, and I believe that it is, though I will ask for your help in finding something out, because I was unable to find very much about this person at all, or the existing NHS networks. It is the obscurity, the sort of nature of these political and indoctrinating groups within NHS that not much of what they do is public. But thankfully, a video that was sent to me, I now have, has been downloaded and kept for posterity. And it is that I shall be looking at over the next few days. And I hope that you will join me for this series. Melanie is pushing a narrative. Make no bones about it. And I thought that the best thing that we could possibly do was begin by taking a look at what kind of narrative is it that Melanie is pushing. This can be seen, I think, in her tweets. So let's take a look at what tweets does Melanie like? What tweets does Melanie repost, despite her exhortations that she is not doing anything that relates to her employer and her views are her own. Unfortunately, as you will see in the excerpts of the video that I will show you over the next few days, that is simply not true. Let's begin. Melanie Holloway, she, her, reposted, "Why are British doctors voting to reject the Cass report?" which was an article in the 17th of July, on the 17th of July, by Hannah Barnes. And Hannah had looked at these doctors that were, they were rejecting it because they didn't know what they were doing. But yet Melanie reposts somebody called Sandy here, who says, because they're medical experts and recognise it is a pile of shite. Really? Okay. So Melanie has reposted something which indicates that she thinks that the Cass report is a pile of shite. Is that right, Melanie? The public must know, because this is exactly the sort of thing that she seems to be involved in. We then have Melanie again retweeting from June the 14th on 2024, Equality Amplified, in which they say that they wish to deliver a trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices. Now, as far as I can tell, Melanie is a gay woman, although it seems to me that she would more likely label herself as queer than she would gay, as only the queer see a ban on conversion practices for trans as anything but gay conversion therapy in a new overcoat. It seems to me that from this tweet, Melanie actually doesn't think that, so she may well identify as queer. It gets worse. Here, Melanie tweets on June the 3rd, 2024, Consortium, alongside Stonewall Mermaids and Transactual, have responded to the news that the Conservative Party pledged to amend the Equality Act. This was the amending of the Equality Act to make sure that the word sex means sex and not gender. This was to amend the Equality Act to protect the safety of women and girls and gay people from the trans infection and the trans political ideology, which is, of course, conversion therapy itself. The consortium here mentions LGBTQ+, women, meaning men, and in effect, what's happened here is that Melanie has retweeted her support for an ideology, trans ideology and gender ideology, which is profoundly homophobic and harmful to women, girls, and our society as a whole. Are you sure, Melanie, that these views are your own and not those of your employer? We then have Melanie retweeting from June the 7th, 2024, because her ex has been somewhat quiet since August. All we do is teach children about sexuality and gender, says Holly Robinson. Every fairy tale is about that. Is it? Right. Every game they play in the playground. Every game they play in the playground is about sex and gender. That's what Melanie's retweeted. Right? So your 4-year-old, when they play a game, is playing a game about sex and gender. Right, okay. Is it me or is there something seriously amiss here? You tell me in the comments. Please do. Give me your feedback on what is the first of a part of a series of things that I'm going to do about Melanie's activities in the NHS. This was in fact criticising Rosie Duffield, who, like many of us, including gay men like myself, have been saying that the teaching of this nonsense in schools has to cease because it is conversion therapy, and that if they get them young enough, they can confuse them so much that they end up in a situation where they're unable to detect reality, as was seen in the first video of this series, discussing the effects found in the report by Colin Wright's Substack. What Rosie means, of course, is we shouldn't teach children about queer sexuality and genders that diverge from heteronormative cisness. This is the kind of nonsense that Melanie spouts, and the kind of nonsense she obviously supports. Why else would she repost it? That particular sentence there has so many red flags hidden in it, and I'm sure that many of you will be able to see that simply by reading what you can see in the screen on the screen in front of you. Make no bones about it. This is someone who is at the heart of one of the NHS's largest staff networks and is in fact one of its senior leadership. This opens questions about influence. This opens questions about what exactly are they doing within the NHS and what does the NHS intend to do to eject them, and with extreme prejudice. Moving on, we then have another swipe here from a post that Melanie has reposted, which is all she seems to do with this not-for-work account. This excoriating review of the media response to the methodologically flawed Cass report by Fair Media Watch is excellent. Once again, the news media failed to take the time to do its job properly, and trans youth are being hurt as a result. An indicator there that the trans child is very much a reality to Melanie Holloway. We have more. reposted again, this one on July the 19th, 2024. Today, Sean Berry and I wrote to Wes Streeting, this is from Carla Denia, expressing our serious concerns about his recent statement on puberty blockers. They're obviously bothered because they were banned. Trans young people need support, not to have their healthcare used as a political football. Trans young people is code for children, by the way. She means children. Medical decisions are for patients and doctors, not politicians. Well, when the patient... Our medical decisions are for patients. Right, okay. And doctors. I'm quite happy to go to my doctor and say, here, doc, stop talking about elective this and elective that. Tell me what you do for your father. Because I want the doctor to tell me, because they're the expert. The problem is, we don't know which doctors are experts anymore, because we've got the like of Upton in his tribunal talking absolute bollocks. Melanie Holloway is behind this 100%. This is a woman with power in the NHS. And somewhere along the line, we have to stop these people. But when will the NHS do that? Your guess is as good as mine. From my perspective, what I say here and now to you is that this is just the beginning of what I've uncovered and what I'm seeing. So please do join me for the further parts of this as I examine the influence of this woman and this network group and what they're teaching people within the NHS. More tomorrow, folks. Don't miss it. I'll see you later. Now, go away. Do your thing. Bye-bye. Hello?
I'm going to dive straight in. I'm going to talk to you about various different things. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the network, what we kind of get up to, as well as having a little bit of a dig into why we're doing this stuff, why we need networks, why we need to be focusing on this stuff. So if I take you back to about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, so before merger happened, but we knew the merger was happening, there were 3 legacy LGBTQIA plus networks, so one in digital, one in NHS England, and one in Health Education England, all really established in their own right and doing really great work. But the 3 of them, the 3 chairs at the time, Anthony, Daniel, and Sam, kind of all got together, started to have conversations about what was going to be the best way to be able to harmonise.
If you want, you have to like.
Actually, can you just mute whoever that was that just came in?
All right.
Thanks. So they just started the work around how do we harmonise 3 fairly well-established staff networks, particularly in that, not everybody was happy about being merged into NHS England. A little bit of, I think they anticipated a little bit of, there might be a little bit of struggle around sort of dominance of who should lead networks, or how did they make sure that there was kind of equal voice in this newly harmonised network. And what was really lovely, they kind of brought members together collectively. They did lots of engagement sessions with members to really listen to what members wanted, pull together this kind of new proposed structure, which is what's on the screen. And it's a bit small, you probably can't see it in great detail.
Beep, 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 beep. Welcome back, good people, to part 2 of my ongoing series investigating how the NHS suckles from the teat of the DEI monstrosity. We looked yesterday and the day before at, first of all, some news research which shows how dangerous these particular belief systems are to people mentally. We then looked at a particular individual who was responsible, called Melanie Holloway, for the LGBTQ+ network. And now we have video evidence of what exactly it is that she's been up to, along with her comrades. And I use that word deliberately. You've already seen by watching that short clip I've put at the front of this today that what she's discussing is the actual evolution, the growth, and how the LGBTQ network has now become a monstrosity in its own right under NHS England, brought together by the sublimation, what do I mean? I can't remember what the word is. What's the word? Oh, God, it'll come to me in a minute. Right. So by the bringing together, the subsuming, got it right, the subsuming of a number of networks into one. You can see from the graphic on the screen, it's not particularly big, but I can give you an idea of it just by looking at it. You can see the words queer, intersectional, and everything else that comes with the majority of this absolute nonsense. It also has trans. intersex, asexual, non-binary. This is the new structure. Now, bear in mind, this is the new structure that came out of the subsuming of those other networks into one. God knows what the size of it is now. And this is, of course, the part of the LGBTQI plus staff network, as you can see there, with the revolting progress flag and its disgusting capitulation to both critical race theory, gender identity theory, and of course queer theory. It'll be interesting to see what comes up next, won't it, as we really start to dig in to what exactly it is that Melanie Holloway some 2 weeks ago was teaching to NHS staff. Keep watching, folks. Keep watching.
So the structure of the network, there's myself as the chair at top. We've got a deputy, and then we've got lots of leads. So we are a big committee. So we decided to have more general leads like events lead, comms lead, intersectionality lead. We have a membership lead, and then other than that, we decided to have acronym leads for each of the letters that's in the acronym that we use, and then an allies lead as well. We have support from other parts of the organisation. So NHS England do provide us with some admin support, and we do have a named person within the comms team who we speak to on a regular basis around getting our stuff out. We have an HRBP that's allocated to us who can support us with any issues or concerns that we have going on, and we also have a contact within the EDI team who can help us with any sort of difficulties or challenges that we face. In addition to that, we do have an exec sponsor who currently is Steve Russell, who's Chief Delivery Officer for NHS England. The bits that we haven't really kind of finessed was we had really hoped that we would get regional contacts for each of the 7 regions. We haven't really been able to focus in on that as yet. The stuff around staff networks from a national perspective for NHS England, whatever happened before, I'm not really sure, but regional networks are not automatically connected in, don't report into national networks. But again, I think there's a piece of work that needs to happen that we want to be focusing on this year, which is where we do make connections with regional networks. We know they don't exist in all regions. And this is really important because there's some of the stuff that some of our members will come to us wanting, but actually we can only really give it to them on a regional basis. So particularly where people want more social events and maybe face-to-face stuff and those kinds of things really needs to come from a region. They're very difficult for us as a national network for us to be able to put on. And then there's the other elements within the organisation that support all staff networks. So there's Freedom to Speak Up Guardians. We've got the Employee Assist programme, trade unions, mental health first aiders that's missed off the list. But yeah, so essentially this is the new structure that we have been working against, and for the most part works really well.
As you are able to hear, there is an explanation of the breakdown of this group. Now, bear in mind that this group is an extra group, i.e., this is not anything to do with NHS work unless it's explicitly attached to EDI, DEI, or from the sound of it, social gatherings. The sheer number of people involved should give us pause for thought. I'd hate to think what the budget is for this in a standard year, but as you can see, there is a network with a formed committee that also includes such things as the intersectionality group, the intersectionality lead. Really? What does that person do? Have they got like a big chart, a big Excel chart where they put down whether you're fat or stupid or gay or queer or bi, and then do the same across the top and tick the boxes so that they can then send you a number that actually tells you how oppressed you are within the NHS structures? What exactly is that? And how about the queer one? What's that about then? What exactly does the queer lead do? How does queer theory have anything to do with the NHS? I'm totting it up here, and I reckon there's more than 20 people involved with this nonsense. And if they're spending 100 hours a year on this, 2 hours a week, I bet it's more than that. I bet it's 20%. I'll put money on it. But if they're spending 100 hours a year on this, what's this costing the public? Where's our money going? But not just that, it also links into just about every other department so they can interfere in what's going on there. And once again, is backed by the union. When is the UK government going to get a handle on this? Wes Streeting needs to take a very close look at what this damned organisation is doing. But what this shows us is the enormity of the problem that we face within the NHS in dealing with these people. Like they're like some fifth column. It's just absolutely insane that they've got access to anything. And as you'll see, as we progress through, it gets worse than you can possibly imagine. Hello.
In terms of what we're here to do, so our mission statement is pretty easy and straightforward. We really just want to try to make NHS England a really good place to work for the LGBTQIA plus community. We obviously, the things that we do, we have our members in mind all of the time, but also really aware that there are people in the organisation that don't want to be part of the network, but we're obviously trying to just improve visibility and inclusiveness like across the whole organisation. We really want to be able to empower, engage and inspire one another. So, you know, again, whilst people tend to look to staff networks as being like the font of everything and they're the ones that are going to provide everything and fix everything, that's really not how it works. We all do it on top of our day jobs. And so it's incredibly difficult to try to move things forward. So actually, we're only going to do this together. So we're really always encouraging our members to kind of get involved in any way that they can, whether it's big or small, makes no difference. And of course, we also stand united with our allies as well. So the national network, we are open to all people to be part of our membership. So we really want to be able to help the organisation to foster a culture of openness and acceptance, and have like a better understanding of how to support LGBTQIA plus people in the workplace.
Beep, 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 beep. Welcome back to the Court of the Edijester for another part in the series on the NHS LGBTQIA network. We've already covered the damaging nature of EDI and DEI in the first of the series. We then moved on to discuss who exactly is running this show. And now we've also seen the length of the network's reach in yesterday's third parter. This is the fourth part in which we examine the LGBTQIA plus network mission statement and look at that in some detail. You've already heard from Melanie this morning at the beginning of this particular video. So it behoves us to take a look and see exactly what does she mean by what she said in that particular clip. The first thing was that, well, our mission statement is easy. Is it? Is it really? Okay, let's take a look at that. How easy is this mission statement? Our mission is to support the LGBTQIA plus lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex, and asexual community. Well, you've got a problem there for a start, Melanie. Okay, because the LGB has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of it, right? Nothing whatsoever. So how you can say this is easy, I don't know. Which means that you must know it's not easy. You know that it isn't easy. So if it's not LGBTQIA plus, what exactly is this network about? Let's see what's revealed as we move forward. It's about something much different than that. It is a community, as you call it, which it's not, and it's to increase the awareness and visibility of the LGBTQIA plus community who will empower, engage, and inspire one another. Really, what to do? To do what exactly? What will they inspire each other to do? This is a question that needs to be answered. There is no LGBTQIA plus community. It only exists in your head, Melanie. Only exists in your head. You stated in your speech that you made there that you want to make NHS England a really good place to work. Is that because it's not now? What exactly are the failings of NHS England that they need this activist group in order to help them achieve what they want to achieve? You want to make inclusiveness across the organisation a thing. Really? Is that inclusive of whom, Melanie? So is your mission statement really that simple? Or are you stating it simple so that people don't look too deeply? Because I imagine that's what's happening, is people don't look deep enough to understand exactly what you're saying. Now, if we remove the idea of the LGBTQIA plus from it altogether, it just becomes our mission is to support the people we have affinity with. Because this is an affinity group, and affinity groups are dangerous, especially this affinity group, because it is a wholly political organ. That's the nature of the beast. We stand together under the LGBTQIA plus umbrella, united with our allies. Okay, so that's everyone then, is it? Everyone. Is that what you're saying? So there's the LGBTQIA, which are the priestly class, and then there's everyone, which is the allies. Anybody outside of that is not in your church. Have I got this right, Mel? Have I? Because that's what it looks like to me. Very interesting comment when you said the network is seen by other people as the font of everything, that are going to solve everything, which really I find very, very strange when you consider that you also made the statement that this is on top of your day job. Well, if it's on top of your day job, then it's not part of your job. What is it? And why does it exist? And why do the NHS allow you to use their logo and branding? If it's on top of your day job, what is the purpose of this? If it's not part of your job, what is the purpose of this network? These are questions that need to be answered, and they're not being answered. They're not. You then state at the bottom, to act as a representative for all LGBTQIA plus staff voices through continued engagement with its membership, and to assist the organisation in creating a culture of openness and acceptance, and provide greater understanding of all LGBTQIA plus matters. What the hell is a LGBTQIA plus matter? What is a LGBTQIA plus matter over and above everybody else? What is a matter? What is it? What, so there are people getting together who don't shag? Talking to each other about not shagging? Can you imagine that? Most boring party in history. Is that what it is, Mel? Really? And they do it in a way that values diversity and brings people together. Yeah, values diversity, but not diversity of thought. Is that right, Mel? Because I don't see you standing from the rooftops for your LGBTQIA plus network, calling out bloody Upton, a man pretending to be a woman and attacking women. I don't see you doing it. So what exactly is this about? You say it brings people together, whether they are from a LGBTQIA plus background or not. What's a LGBTQIA plus background? Your mission statement is easy. Your mission statement isn't easy, Mel. It's absolutely incomprehensible. Nobody could understand it. That's why you say it's simple, so that people don't look. We see you. And you need to know that. We see you, okay? You want to foster a culture of openness and acceptance. Are you telling me that the NHS doesn't have a culture of openness and acceptance? I know the people that are watching this will want to know why they don't have a culture of openness and acceptance. Perhaps you should ask Wes Streeting why there isn't a culture of openness and acceptance. Or if there is, which I know there is, you are pushing a narrative designed to undermine that. That's what this is. Let's continue on. Let's see what else Mel has to say that may well be of interest to us.
More specifically, our aims and objectives. So I guess ultimately what we're really here for in the first instance is we need to provide safe, trusted, supported spaces for our members, be able to help people to get peer-to-peer support, allow them to have networking opportunities, and as I say, really empower them to be agents of change themselves. You know, there's that saying, I don't know where it comes from, where it takes a village. And this is definitely one of those situations. We need everybody to kind of be involved. In addition to that, we try to support NHS England to meet its obligations that it has under the Equalities Act of 2010. So there is a part of the Equality Act, which is called the Public Sector Equality Duty. And so we have, the organisation has a responsibility to make sure that it's meeting those. And that's basically, there's three elements to it, but essentially it boils down to they have to make sure they do everything that they can to eliminate any kind of discrimination in its various forms from happening within an organisation. And the other one could be summarised in that they have a responsibility to try to foster good relations between people who have a protected characteristic, whatever one that may be, and those that don't. So you may have come across, because I work in the world of EDI, I come across it all of the time. As soon as you start to focus on more marginalised groups, people that haven't had as much access to things as the sort of majority of society. The majority then start to get a little bit itchy, they get a little bit fidgety, and they feel like their power's being challenged. And they then that's when you then start to have this, what we call in EDI, whataboutery. That whole, well, what about me? Oh, you're doing that program for that group of people, but what about me? Why don't I have a program that helps me progress in the organization, or whatever it may be? So we're here to try to support the organization to make sure that it's meeting those obligations. We really want to remove barriers, improve inclusivity. We want to do that by working alongside other networks. So the things that we do, we really try to look through the lens of intersectionality, which is why we decided to have an intersectionality lead. We also want to be able to make links with external networks. So sort of other NHS networks, but also outside of that, and any kind of charity organisations or anybody that's working in the field, just to make sure that we're maintaining our knowledge around what is best practice, because things are always shifting or changing within this area. And then in addition to that, we do anything else that we're asked to do. So we're often asked by the organisation to take part in policy reviews. They wanted us to support them with hybrid working. Unfortunately, we couldn't influence that decision. We were told, this is the decision, but how are you going to make us be able to deliver it in the right way? Other bits and pieces. So more recently, the stuff that HR and OD have been doing around the new values and behaviours, the line manager development programme. There's a whole raft of different things that we're asked to kind of take part in. And as much as possible, we try to make sure that we are representing our community in those spaces.
Forgive me if, as this gets more and more ridiculous, that I unfortunately will get more and more ridiculous with it. But some of this makes me laugh. I tell you why it does. It's so ridiculous. So we have now the LGBTQI plus network 2, slide 2, the net group will. This is the aims and objectives of the network as laid out there and discussed by Melanie. So the specific aim is ultimately, first instance, that's what she says at the very beginning, is to provide safe spaces, trusted peer-to-peer support, and empower agents of change. Safe from what, Mel? Safe from what? We will provide you with the safe space. What from? What do people in the NHS need to be safe from? Each other? I know there are times when they need to be safe from the patients, but you want to make a safe space from what? A strong scent? Warrior teachers will get that. A strong scent? It's absolutely insane. Peer-to-peer support. So you're telling me what? So asexual people are supporting other asexual people. Have you had a shag? No. I've not had a shag. Have you had a shag? No. Okay, that's great then. Thanks. I really enjoyed this peer-to-peer. And are these ridiculous meetings taking place in NHS time, on NHS premises, with NHS approval? Are they? That's what I want to know. Absolutely insane. Promote and celebrate the work the network do. Raise the profile internally and externally. Whatever for? Why do you want to raise it externally? Because you certainly aren't. You certainly aren't. There's much information about you, is there, for a start, let alone your network. Provide safe, supportive and trusted spaces for colleagues. And then you want to empower your members to be agents of change. What is it you want to change? What exactly is it the NHS has got so wrong that you want to change? There was a really interesting particular bit that was mentioned there by Mel, which was, she said, I don't remember where it comes from, but it takes a village. We need everybody. As if that metaphor is even vaguely suitable. I thought to myself when I heard it, but of course it's absolutely suitable. It's absolutely suitable. And it illustrates perfectly within that one phrase, the mindset of this particular network. The saying is, it takes a village to raise a child. These people do not think of those outside their network as adults. They think of them outside the network as children who don't have the right way of knowing, who aren't thinking in the correct way. Make no bones about it. This is a radical activist group. A radical activist group. She then brings in the Public Sector Equality Duty and the Equality Act, which are both, of course, things that the NHS is actually tied and bound to do. But what Mel thinks they should do and what it actually means they should do seem to be two completely different things. And Mel is quite happy to avoid the topic of equality of opportunity, which is one of the main tenets of the public sector equality duty. She does mention that people with protected characteristics are to be protected, but also those that don't have protected characteristics. And she does so in such a way that implies that the QIA in some way has a protected characteristic, which it doesn't. Forced teaming there, you can see it, forced teaming. We know this term well, the term forced teaming. We know this is what they're doing. Forced teaming. And then before you know it, we get the other side of it. So the Equality Act 2010 protects us all. It's a shield, not a sword. But not to Mel. Because what Mel is then able to say is that that once you start to do something for a particular, well, we've got this particular program for this group, you then get all the rest of us, so to speak, or the majority, who do what she says because you hear about it so often in EDI circles. Whataboutery. Whataboutery. Well, they've got this. Why haven't we got it? Mel is advocating for the elevation of a group of people who, as far as I can see, require nothing over and above what everybody else gets. Not one thing. What about, it's absolutely insane. So that, in other words, there is an oppressor who, when you upset the oppressor by having your, asexual coffee morning, and they go, why can't we have a coffee morning? Then that's the sort of thing you can expect. It's whataboutery, because they're not special like the asexual people. This is a power and oppression narrative. Where have we heard that before? This is critical social justice in action in the NHS. And the weirdest thing of all is, she then starts rattling on about intersectionality. The old, who's got what problem where? Intersectionality. Intersectionality for what? Well, I mean, what do people who are, look at the QIA need? What programs do they need? But particularly the asexual people. Is it possible that they need some kind of bum guard to save them from the gays? Or perhaps a fanny log to save them from the straights? What do these people need? None of what is being said here is in any way relevant to the job of being an NHS worker. None of it. Not one single line, not one single word. Worryingly, she then continues, we link with external networks outside the NHS to maintain best practice. Who? Who are you linking with? Is it Stonewall? Is it Mermaids? Is it Transactual? Is it any of the other activist organisations that are causing so much trouble? And then most damning of all to me is the recognition, or certainly the admission from Mel, that they are involved in policy reviews. They're involved in policy reviews. This is an organisation that is put together, that is done above their job. It's nothing to do with the NHS, and yet they are involved in policy reviews. Not only are they involved in policy reviews, the NHS uses this group as an operational resource. This is a hard left, Marxist frameworked, intersectional activist group at work in the heart of the NHS, providing training to people in the NHS, spreading a mantra of power and oppression to people in the NHS. She also mentions, we do anything else they ask us to. I bet you do. I bet you do. Work with other network groups to ensure intersectionality across groups is addressed. Right, okay, grievance. It's all grievance. This stuff makes people mentally ill. This stuff makes people ill. Agree any additional or ad hoc requests they receive, either internally or externally, choosing what level of stakeholder engagement they can accommodate with. The word stakeholder is essentially the word comrade. This is a socialist, hard left, neoliberal, insane intersectionality cult operating in the NHS with a veneer of respectability that is given to them purely by dint of our ability to tolerate the intolerant. And it needs to end. How can it possibly get worse? Well, ladies and germs, for that you'll have to wait. Next Warrior Teacher program's in April, by the way. Come and join us. I'll see you later. Ta-da! Don't do anything I wouldn't do, will you? Bye. Hello? Beep, 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 beep. Here we are, folks. Once again, let us begin.
In terms of an action plan that we have, I mean, it's massive. It's way bigger than any network should have. But I like to be ambitious and adventurous. And so it's got way more things on it than it should do. We want to make sure that we're providing the right platforms, making sure that we're engaging with members. We have a commitment to making sure that we use the majority of the LGBTQIA plus diversity days that happen in a year to be able to build awareness and understanding in the wider organisation. So that's, at least 25 plus that are LGBTQIA plus specific. But again, like I say, because we've got a commitment to intersectionality, we've also included on our plan things like Black History Month, Menopause Awareness Month, Disability History Month, all of that lovely stuff. And we do have a very extensive plan for 2025 to try and make sure that we keep on top of stuff. And that's a real mix. For some things, it might just be a piece of comms that we'll be putting out to just raise awareness. And then when you've got things like LGBT History Month, we've got a whole raft of activities and stuff that we're going to be sharing over the course of the month. It just depends. And we try to have a balance around events. As we all know, funds within the NHS are very difficult to come by these days. Really hard to justify getting funding for speakers, but where we can, we do. But we try to balance that out by having internal guest speakers as well. We're trying to look at how we can develop opportunities for members to continue with networking and training and that sort of stuff. As I mentioned already, it's on our plan this year to support with the regional networks. But in addition, there are a few extra things. So in the back end of last year, I did start liaising with members, ran some sessions around us developing an allyship program. And I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to launch that this year. We're also looking at the moment to be able to provide more individual support to members that may need it. So that kind of pastoral care element, which we're a bit limited of what we're able to deliver at the moment, but I'm currently sourcing some training that some of our committee members can go on so that we can then start to do that a little bit more. It's just another element of how we can support members. It's been told to us in many different places in feedback forms that some of our members really want us to look at how we might be able to offer mentoring and coaching. That's something that we're going to start to investigate, but that's also something that I think that I would be taking back to the wider organisation to see what they're going to do around that, as opposed to it being something that the network's set up and run.
Well, me, I'm gobsmacked here at what they're doing. Goodness, they are busy bees, aren't they, in the NHS, paid for, may I remind everyone, by public money. That's you and I, for God's sake. It's extraordinary to hear them say that what they're going to have is 25 plus days specific commitment to LGBTQIA plus visibility. 25 days of doing what? Hey, how many people does the NHS employ? I mean, maybe have a thing. I think it's somewhere in the region of 1.5 million people are employed by the NHS. You want to do the maths? 1.5 million. Now let's assume, just to be straightforward, that only 100,000 people attend these ridiculous events. But that's 100,000 people attending these ridiculous events for 25 days of the year. Are these ridiculous events taking place on NHS time? Are the people that go being paid while they go? Is that what's happening? West Streeting needs to look at this and look at it very, very closely. I'll be interested to see what Charlotte Gill has to say about this. And also, the work Doge UK is doing. What is actually happening here? What is actually happening? She talks about how they share the information. The LGBT history activities are shared by whom? Is that sent on internal comms, internal NHS comms? If so, who signs it off? Is the work done to prepare these 25 days done on NHS time, or is this still part of your gay job, Mel? What is it? Because I need to know. Because you're not really saying anything in this particular presentation you're giving. You're saying nothing. You want to be able to obtain funds for speakers from the NHS, but it's hard to get external speakers, or at least get the NHS to pay for it. Thank God. Some semblance of sense. Who would these speakers be, I wonder? Who would these people be that would come in and talk? Who? Where would you? It wouldn't be me, would it? Or Helen Joyce? Or perhaps Judy Bindel? Or Dennis Kavanagh? Who would it be? that would come in and speak, because God forbid they'd come in and speak against your ideology. So no, they replaced them with internal guest speakers, who I imagine would come from your network. And you mentioned, of course, here as well that you wish to get other networks involved that are in trusts that are not involved with you right now, so you can build a bigger organisation. That sort of stuff, I think you called it, didn't you? What do you mean, that sort of stuff? What exactly does that mean, that sort of stuff? You want to develop an allyship program? What will allyship look like? If you're going to have an allyship program for the LGBTQIA, who you think is all about intersectionality and finding power and oppression and grievance, what's that allyship program going to look like? What you actually mean is you want to develop an indoctrination program for political activists within the NHS, and you expect the NHS to pay for it, if not in money, certainly in resources and time. What's that about? And what the hell is individual pastoral care got anything to do with it? People come into work, they do the job. If they can't do the job, they go home. If they're not very well, they go home. If they're unable to complete their tasks, they go home. What do you mean by individual pastoral care? What do you think you are, that you need to offer people individual pastoral care? And who are these people that need individual pastoral care, who are actually in the NHS and still in a job? What exactly does that mean? Who are you sourcing your training from, Mel? And exactly who and what will be their qualifications will be providing mentoring and coaching? And what will the subject of that mentoring and coaching be? And who on earth is there in your network that could be a mentor or coach, certainly in your leadership team, to, for example, a surgeon or a specialist in anesthesia? You spoke again quite distinctly about links with external bodies. Who? Who do you want to link with? I don't understand what you're doing. I really don't. Let's keep going.
And then, like I say, this extensive plan of comms and events, to give you a bit of an idea, that's what it those are the kinds of things that we are covering between us as a committee. It's quite adventurous. Who knows if we're going to make it, but we're going to do our best to try. And as I say, in terms of our network, we're open to all people. We're open to NHS colleagues, so you don't have to work in NHS England. We have associate membership. It does mean that sometimes some of the stuff that we run, or if there's some feedback or certain things that we kind of get involved in, sometimes it is limited just to NHS England staff. But as much as possible, we really want to be hearing from the voices of people outside. We really want to break down the silo working. We know that there's some amazing LGBTQI+ networks out there in trusts that are doing some amazing work. And I think we really all need to be able to link in together to build off of the great work that we're all doing. As I say, national network meetings also open to everybody. We don't currently have the facility to be able to advertise our dates. I'm hoping that that will change soon and that will go on the hub. But anybody that wishes to attend that isn't a network member can just email the inbox and we'll happily send you the link for you to be able to join. We have been offering safer spaces for a while. This is something that actually I set up at Health Education England. And these were around more marginalised identities. So we started off with a non-binary safer space, a trans safer space, a bi+, and then we moved into offer an asexual one. I think that might be, and then the most recent one was I started a rainbow family one. So what I found was when we were running events and things like that, we were having a lot of people join us, and there was lots of conversations going in the chat where there were family members or friends of people who are LGBTQIA+, who are supporting them in their lives. And I kind of realised that they also need a space sometimes to get a bit of support and peer-to-peer support. So that's probably one of our most popular safer spaces that we run. We had noticed that numbers had started to decline in that towards the end of last year. So we did put out a feedback form, which we've now evaluated. We are going to be continuing safer spaces. They will be relaunching from March onwards for the rest of the year. We're just going to make some minor tweaks to how we do it. And the biggest thing I think that we realised is that we just hadn't communicated it enough. So we will do a little campaign to publicise our safer spaces. There is going to be a new additional one as well. So the queer leads within the network will be creating a queer safer space as well. In addition to our monthly national network meetings, we offer additional drop-ins for members. They're really informal. There's a Wednesday one that takes place fortnightly, and then there's a Friday afternoon one that's weekly. And we do have quite a few members that go into those. It's just for people to be able to have a bit of a chat for half an hour. All the events that we organise are open to everybody, and as we also offer like training sessions for teams. So every quarter I run a workshop around LGBTQIA plus inclusion.
This is absolutely extraordinary. I'm quite frankly shocked, he says, I don't know whether you are, to discover that this is the type of activities that they are carrying out on the NHS. And I have many questions about cost, about resources, about printing, about rooms, about how these are paid for, what amount of public funds are being used to do it. I have massive questions around that, because I think what we are seeing is that this is in fact far bigger than any of us realised, and that the money being spent is extraordinary. As you saw there from the slide, which you can now see on the screen here, 2025 LGBTQIA plus awareness begins in January with the Holocaust Memorial Library event. What the hell has that got to do with it? What's that got to do with it? Right? The truth of the matter is that the Holocaust was a terrible time for the Jewish people, but also for gays and lesbians. It had nothing to do with the TQIA. In fact, cross-dressing was a standard activity in Nazi Germany. The hell are they doing? We move on, and in February you get LGBT plus History Month. Really, what? They're just going to go back to 2015, are they? The sooner we understand and realise that the LGBT has got nothing to do with gays and lesbians, the better it will be for everybody. And then you've got Ero Awareness Week. Are you going to promote that? You have people walking around with a t-shirt saying, I don't screw anything. What are you going to do, Ero Awareness? Well, you need to be aware of people who aren't having sex. It's absolutely insane on every level. What do we end up then in March? We get Women's History Month. Oh, goodness gracious me. There we go. Something for women. Zero Discrimination Day. What? It's utter. This is just performative rubbish. And then, of course, Trans Day of Visibility. So, in other words, cross-dressing men practicing their fetish in the workplace. Isn't that right now? April, International Asexuality Day. So that's a day when some people who don't sleep with people won't be sleeping with people. Please make it make sense, right? I don't even know what the next one is. International Day of Pink. Do they mean the singer? I do. What? Good morning. It's International Day of Pink. What's that about? No idea. None. I'm just clueless. What? International Day of Pink. Lesbian Week of Visibility. She's over there. This is real. I'm sorry, folks, but it just, the more I go through this, and there's plenty more to come, the more ridiculous it gets. What have we got in May? International Family Equality Day. I don't even know what that means. Ida Hobbit. You know, this is just rubbish. Agenda Pride Day, Pansexual and Pan-Romantic Awareness Day in May. Okay, right, fine. You know, 1.5 million people, 100,000 people will bother to go. How much of this nonsense is taking place in work time? How much of this nonsense is being spread through the work intranet? How much of this nonsense is on the servers of the NHS? Dear God, it all needs to go. That's all I can say. And then we get June, Pride Month, Carers Week. At last, Carers Week. Something worth looking at. Out and Proud Parents Day. I don't know what that is. Have you got any children? Yes. Are you a pufter? Right, shout loud. Lezer? Yep. Kids? Yep. Okay, it's your day. Just, what is it? What have we got in July? Oh my God, Non-Binary Awareness Week. Guys, anybody spotted any non-binaries? No. I haven't seen any today, have you? No, not yet. No. Well, we've got a week. You might find one. Non-binary. So in other words, people who are insane week. They're working in the NHS. And look at that. Absolutely nothing in August. You know why there's nothing in August? Because they're all on bleeding holiday. September, Bisexual Awareness Week. Are you aware that there are bisexuals? I am, yeah. We've got a whole week to explain to you what that is. I don't think I need that. This is absolutely surreal. Then it gets worrying, and I'll tell you why it gets worrying. Look at October and November. Is it me, or is October, November probably one of the busiest periods for the NHS because of the winter? The hell are they doing? Menopause Awareness Month. I love that it's a month. Menopause Awareness Month. Black History Month. International Lesbian Day. I thought we'd had one of those. No, we had Lesbian Week of Visibility. I wonder if it's the same lesbian. Right? World Mental Health Day. Oh, great. Just fabulous, right? Right? National Coming Out Day. International Pronouns Day. Oh, please. Just F off. Will you? I can't cope. International Pronouns Day. Gender Fluid Visibility Week. Oh, that sounds terrible. People got to go around splashing their gender fluid everywhere. What's that on your plate? I'm not sure. I think it might be gender fluid. This is real. This is real, right? Asexuality Awareness Week. Did we have that before? What have they got? Asexuality Awareness Week. What else have they got on there? We did. We have what's RO then? Oh, I've got it wrong. I obviously need that week. RO. What's RO? Aromantic. That's aromantic. That's people who don't have romantic feelings. Or is it people that do have romantic feelings? Obviously, I need that awareness week. What else have we got? Intersex Awareness Day. It's DSDs, right? It's different. And these people have said time and again, please do not include us in this bollocks. Time and again. November, Men's Health Awareness and IMD, International Men's Day. Right? Men's Health Awareness. You're a man my age, you're aware of your health. The rest of you can bugger off. Oh, good Lord. Disability History Month. At last, the disability gets a look in. The one thing that I've been teaching about this week to the warrior teacher. We've been teaching about understanding disability. The one damn thing that we should be spending money on. And what do they get? They get a week. Well done. Oh, hang on a minute. It's just about their history, not the fact that they're there. And they might need assisted technologists. Gosh, Disability History Week. That's all right. So many, many years ago, excuse me, I can't get in the room. There's no stair. There's no ramp. Yeah, all right. Be with you later. Many years ago, swine, Transparent Day. Oh, God. Should say Gusset Fumbler Day. Transgender Day of Remembrance, where they remember prostitutes in Brazil that are killed. I can't. And then finally in December, World AIDS Day. What's going on here? You know, do you not find this obscene and obscure? Because I do. And then we've got the next thing. The LGBTQI plus staff network membership is open to all. All. So it doesn't matter who you are. Do you understand that the LGBTQIA plus title means nothing? It could say hard left intersectional neoliberal lunatics, right? Or the Fruit Loop network. It doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with LGBTQIA, Black History Month, disabled people, or whatever it may be. Nothing. It's about building a consensus within the NHS based on a hard left neoliberal political ideology. In other words, we've got a socialist network, really hardcore one, in the NHS who is garnering the resources from the public in order to push its filthy agenda. That's what it is. So we're going to have membership open to all. Right, I was really pleased to hear that they've got safe spaces for the marginalised identities of non-binary, trans, asexual. That's and every single one of those things you pick to be, right? They're not innate. It's just nonsense. So non-binary is just nonsense. That's just nut jobs, right? Because obviously the minute they become non-binary, they also become not binary. So they're in fact part of a binary. Non-binary, right? Trans, right? As fetishists or the mentally ill. Asexual, nobody cares. Just, I don't believe that they don't frig themselves. I just simply don't believe it. They're, picking the bean and bashing the bishop as fast as they can, I imagine. Rainbow family, I don't even know what that is. But what they mean by rainbow family is they're saying that even external people who have nothing to do with the NHS, who are just family members or friends of people who work in the NHS, can become part of their network. This is not an LGBTQI plus staff network. This is a political movement being paid for by the public at the heart of the NHS. That's what it is. They do drop-in sessions fortnightly and weekly just so people can have a bit of a chat. They're there to do a job, not have a bit of a chat. What the hell is going on? Workshops around inclusion are done regularly so they can encourage more people into this. This needs to be ferreted out. And we've got to burn it to the ground, and then we've got to salt the earth. But we shall continue on our journey tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining me so far. Come and be a warrior teacher. If you can buy me a coffee, do. This stuff is taking such a long time. I need some money. So if you can buy me a coffee, well, join my Substack, but better still become a warrior teacher. Do so. Other than that, that'll do. Right? More tomorrow, folks. Now you can go away and do whatever it is you do with your lives, because this is what I do with mine. It's desperate. Bye-bye. Beep, 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 beep. Here we are, folks. Once again, let us begin. Hello. Beep, 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 beep. Here we are, folks. Once again, let us begin.
We did a member survey early last year. It was quite specific though. So we'd been asked a question from our exec sponsor, which was what would good look like at NHS England if they were getting LGBTQIA plus inclusion right. I feel that they already have those answers, but I said that I would ask members, and so we included it in the member survey. We also asked people what did they expect from an executive sponsor as well, so that we could offer some feedback to them around what the expectations are. And then we asked a final question, which was, what do you think the network should be focusing on? It was really interesting. We had some really wonderful results. We had some very interesting results. And I think what was really clear to me is that we did need to kind of set the boundaries out for some members around what staff networks are able to do and what they're not able to do. And unfortunately, as often the way is, we have as much power as the organisation allows us to have power. And there are just some things that we really can't influence and control. I will kind of cover some of those in a moment. But these generally were the areas of focus. And again, when you look at that, you can't put all of this into an action plan all in 1 year. So these are things that we're having to take elements of, build it into the action plan, and make sure that we have stuff that we're kind of focusing on for future as well. But people are really wanting better visibility in the organisation. They want better senior visibility in the organisation from LGBTQIA plus leaders. They want to make sure that there is a safe and inclusive environment. They do want better education for the wider organisation, but they also want to see some sort of training stuff that's specifically for them as well, to help them to develop. They want to make sure that we're involved in that policy and practice changes. It goes without saying, we know that we need to have a trans and non-binary focus on the work that we're doing. We know that these folk within our community are having the worst experiences currently. But also LGBTQIA plus people of colour as well.
Beep, 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 beep. Right, we're off again. Next part. Right, now listen. Before we start, to some of you gizzard flapping cluckers out there who aren't happy because I'm taking my time with this, it's because I'm busy. All right, this is my biggest teaching week in terms of the Warrior Teachers. So this is it's 4:30 in the damn morning, right? So I'm trying to get this out to you as fast as I can, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that the devil's in the detail. So please, although I know that some of you may be gagging, just wait, right? We'll do it a bit at a time. It's not going anywhere. No rush. I'm doing it as fast as I can. So stop flapping your gizzards. You're driving me up the bloody wall, right? Okay. So you've heard a little bit more from our friend Mel there. Let's think about what it was she said. I mean, you sit here and think, what exactly does all this mean? Because they're actually saying very little, but making huge statements that I think are not necessarily true for a start. But we'll see. So member survey. Did she mention a member survey, right? About visibility. We asked the members what they wanted. In other words, the tail is wagging the dog. We asked the members what we wanted. The members of what? This word members bothers me, right? They're all employees of the NHS, but now they're members of a separate group. That's what's important to me here. There's something wrong with that. And they want more visibility in community building. Really? I mean, how could these people be any more visible? Perhaps we should, execute a few and stick their heads on pikes. They'd be visible then, wouldn't they? Let's go medieval on their house. But what we're seeing here is this need for these people to have attention. I want attention, I want attention, I want attention. And I do genuinely think it's the tail wagging the dog, but you can let me know what you think. So they asked the exec sponsor, what the exec sponsor said, what would good look like to you? Why is he asking? Well, that's appeasement. What he should have said was, we're closing you down. It's just appeasement to these people. So then they asked the group, what does a good exec sponsor look like? And they came back with, we'd like a safe and inclusive environment. Safe from what? Again, the same nonsense that we see time and time again, So then they want more education and awareness. So this was the interesting bit, and I hope you caught it. You can always go back and have a look, can't you? They want better education for the wider group. Well, I mean the NHS generally. They want better education for the what? What do they want better education for people in? Using pronouns? Pretending trans and non-binary is real? Or perhaps helping people who are cutie pock? Or get involved in Hobbit Day? What training do they want? What they mean is they want their belief and their demands to be taken on board by the wider NHS without any argument. They don't mean we want better education and awareness. What they mean is we want to indoctrinate more people and scare more people into not speaking up about this utter, abject, lunatic cult. That's what I think it is. But you can let me know. Then they want training specifically for them. Well, Mel didn't say what it was. What do we mean by training specifically for them? Activist training? Because that's what it's going to be. Activist training? Is it training in how to become an activist? Because it's more than likely that's what it's going to be. That's what these drop-in centres are about. Really, training specifically for them. And then they want to be involved in policy and practice changes. And as Mel said, we only have as much power as the organisation gives us. Why the hell is she talking about power? I thought this was a supportive thing. It's not a supportive thing, by the way. Why the hell is she talking about power? Well, because that's what they want, power, and they mustn't be given it. And that's why they need to be disbanded. And then, of course, intersectionality raised its ugly head again. And finally, we have the trans and non-binary focus, because they're having the worst time of it at the moment. Are they? Or what? Pretending you're something you're not, demanding things from people that they don't want to give you, and putting your back behind an authoritarian, hard-left, neoliberal, identitarian cult, which is anti-science, anti-reality, child-harming, and homophobic and misogynistic. Yeah, I think it's possible that when you do that, you might have the hardest time. It's not a hard time because you're trans and non-binary. Nobody believes in that bollocks anyway. You're getting the hardest time because you are vile, because your belief system is vile, because you are authoritarian, and because you are gender-addled grievance gerbils. And then, of course, Mel pops in. And, of course, we need to deal with LGBTQIA, people of colour. That's what we're going to focus on. Honest to God. What colour? Purple? People of colour. Do you think they've got a chart? How black is she? Well, number 4. Not really black. That's too white adjacent. This is the lunacy of critical race theory being dragged into this, which, again, goes to prove what I said earlier, that the LGBTQIA has got nothing to do with the LGBTQIA as they define it. This is actually simply a activist group hiding in plain sight in the NHS, funded by the NHS, with its own specific liaison with upper management. It has to stop. But should we keep going? Let's just do a bit more and see what else we can find, and exactly how mad does this get? Keep watching.
So Tasha asked me to talk a little bit about what we've done in the network as well, and this was something that we shared as part of the member survey. So I thought it might be helpful to be able to share here in terms of a "you said we did," but then we added an extra bit, which is the "we will." So we may have done some stuff, but it doesn't mean that we're stopping there, and we'll continue to kind of do stuff. So that whole thing around promoting safe spaces. We're doing that. All of the things that I've already mentioned, we're introducing that queer safer space. People want networking and social events. It's really interesting. People say they want social events, and then when we set them up, no one turns up for them, which is a real challenge, right? I'm sure other people have those experiences as well. And this is why we want to make contacts within regions so that we can really link people up. And actually, that's maybe something that we can do where we can link across to NHS Trust networks as well, because then you've got more possibility of being able to link that in. So we do have some ideas. We also have an idea for an annual face-to-face event. This has been supported by our exec sponsor. Just haven't had time to really think about it. It's probably the next thing that I will be thinking about, trying to organise for later on this year. And it will be a part sort of business kind of thing. So there'll be some speakers. It will focus on, LGBTQIA plus inclusion, but there will then be a second part to it for those that want to have a bit more of a social thing attached to it. We know that the organisation and the wider NHS is lacking in being able to access inclusion training around LGBTQIA plus awareness. And hopefully lots of people already know that there was a module that was created that was available on e-learning for healthcare that was removed under pressure from the last government. we continue to lobby the organisation to be able to reinstate it. We will continue to do it. I have said in multiple places, it's probably the hill that I will die on, mostly because I co-wrote it along with Lizzie Streeter from the LGBT health team. I'm hoping that we're edging closer to it, but it's been taken down now for well over a year. So it's definitely an area of difficulty. Somebody said in their feedback in the member survey, there's nothing going on in the network, which was a little bit wounding. And I then went off and did a whole, right, what have we actually done? And so I worked out from February 2023 to about May 2024, we'd shared over 30 personal stories from various network members across different diversity days. We'd arranged over 15 different events, and we'd put additional comms out for over 15 different diversity days, as well as doing monthly meetings, as well as putting in additional support sessions when stuff was happening in the outside world. That doesn't feel like nothing going on in the network. It may not be the thing that you want. And I think if the network is not doing stuff that you want, there is a process that you're able to, there's an anonymous form where you can contact us at any point to tell us you should be doing more of this or stop doing that. We're always wanting to hear from members. We have, it says here that we're going to look at using Yammer. We've started to do that. Yammer, also called Viva Engage. There's a group on there that was created way before us. That's a Rainbow Network one. It's an NHS-wide group. We have joined that, and we're trying to breathe some life into that and having a commitment to post more things on that to try to bring our community together across NHS organisations. People wanted some clarity on the committee and how it works, so we updated our shared purpose, which has details of the committee roles and responsibilities, and shared that. People wanted us to signpost resources and support, and we've done that. We're just waiting for a page on the hub so that we can actually list our resources there. Being consulted about policy change, like I say, we can't make the organisation consult with us, but staff networks collectively have requested a more formal process be implemented by the policy team, and we continue to collectively ask for that, because what we find sometimes is that we're brought in very at the last minute to get involved, and we'd like it to be in a more planned way. Members wanted us to lobby the organisation to have a workplace equality standard that replicates the race equality and the disability equality. It has been promised. It was promised that it was going to start last year. It's now promised that it's going to start this year. We're continuing to lobby for that, but it's at least a year's worth of work off. So it will be a good year, 18 months before we even see that, once that work has started. But I do think it's really important, because currently the organisation doesn't have anything specific in terms of an action plan around LGBTQIA+ inclusion.
Absolutely gets more interesting by the minute, doesn't it? It's quite extraordinary stuff. Let's have a look at what was said there across those 3 slides. Once again, we have the situation where they're talking about nothing going on in the network. That's interesting, isn't it? Nothing going on in the network. Wonder why. So the survey said, I couldn't resist. So what they're saying is that they had the staff survey, and one of the things that came out of the staff survey was that there was nothing going on in the network. All of the stuff I've covered so far is nothing. There's nothing going on in the network. Well, does that mean they're completely ineffective? If so, has anybody looked at the efficacy of this? Should it keep going? Does it need to keep going? So that you said nothing going on in the network, we did. Here's what they did. Offering quarterly learning sessions on LGBTQI+ inclusion and trans and non-binary awareness. Nothing going on. Since February 2023, the network has shared over 30 personal stories. I mean, this is all interesting stuff, but 30 personal stories? Really? What's that about? Lived experience, perhaps? It's like it's coded into it, isn't it? Every single nasty little bit of this boondoggle. It's coded into it, right? They've run face-to-face. Part business focused on inclusion, and then a social thing, and still people didn't turn up. Nothing's going on in the network. So they're going to look at using Yammer to share info more widely. I can't believe they're still using Yammer, which is this, it's like MSN Messenger in the NHS, right, where they send information to each other. It's just extraordinary. And they think that they can solve this by linking up across regions and trusts. Now, bear in mind, NHS England, big, huge, right? And that they've been throwing money at this left, right, and centre, and they've been advertising it and sticking it out on comms and using everything else that we pay for to push their political vile agenda, and yet still people aren't turning up. What's going on? I'm quite heartened by that. You heartened by that? Nobody turns up. But it's the poison that it creates. That's the problem. It's not whether people turn up or not. It's the poison that it creates. Right? They're saying that inclusion training is lacking. And then they're worried about an inclusion package that was removed by the previous government. Previous government has no power to remove a training package from the NHS. The NHS has the power to remove the training package from the NHS. I wonder which one it was. Was it one about pregnant people, perhaps? Was it one of those? Or was it the one where non-binary Jesus came into play? Don't know. I've got no idea. We have no idea of knowing what's going on. They wanted some more clarity on the committee and how it operates. So they're putting together a shared purpose, details the committee's roles and responsibilities, but it isn't yet up because they haven't got a page on the internet. It's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So this module that was removed, they co-wrote with somebody called Lily Streeter, who's a LGBTQ loon in the NHS. Lily Streeter, right? Who's got a degree in contemporary dance. I shall now explain to you the importance of LGBTQ inclusion through the medium of dance. It strikes me as what we've actually got here. We've been selling people shite degrees for years, right? Under social sciences and all the cobblers, right? Gender, tap dancing, whatever it may be. Or we've been selling shite degrees. These are just people that have got shite degrees, and the NHS has gone, we'll have you. Just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Over 15 different diversity gays monthly meetings and additional support centres that they also want to run for the outside world. World domination will never be enough. They've also got an anonymous reporting tool where the people can tell them what they want them to do. Why have they got an anonymous reporting tool for their membership to tell them what to do? What is that? I just don't... What's going on here? It's absolutely insane. They want a page on the hub and they haven't got one. And then what they want to do is, get this, they want to introduce a workplace standard like you would introduce, like they've got for race and disability. In other words, an internal stonewall. An internal stonewall, because they've already got one for race. Disability, already said it. Let's get stuck into that. But they've already got one for race. So they want the same thing again. This is just about power. And interesting that they use the word lobbied. Lobby the organisation to have an LGBTQ work standard. What does that include? What workplace standard should there be for LGBTQ? So, I know what it'd be. Wouldn't it be, men must wear pink on Fridays. Handbags at dawn. Is that what it's going to be? Billiard tables for lesbians. It's just surreal. The only way you could build that is by using stereotypes. What tampons in the men's? Is that what they want? Is it what they want to treat trans men like they're gay men? It's utterly insane. I just watch it, and the more I watch it and the more I go through it, I find it so utterly surreal. A formal process like they have for race and disability. We are not giving you that because this is simply a political lobby group, but it's one with a very vile belief system attached to it. All right, so that's your lot for today. Go on, I'm knackered. But it's good to be speaking to you as always. If you're enjoying my series and you can help me, please do chuck a few quid in the pot by buying me a coffee, or better still, subscribe to my Substack, and even better still, come and be a warrior teacher. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you with another bit of this in the next 24 hours. Ta-da! Have a grand day. Hello. Hello, peeps. We're off again, continuing with the staff feedback to the LGBTQIA plus contemporary dance and literature group. Let's go.
People said they didn't know how to be active, or there was a lack of opportunity to be involved. We've shared our 2025 comms and events plan. We welcome people's ideas and suggestions. but also we welcome people to actually get more involved in that stuff. And we can help support people. We'll buddy you up with somebody from the committee to be able to, if you want to run an event yourself, or you want to do a speaking event, but you're a little bit nervous, we can support you with all of that stuff. Writing your own story, writing a more sort of generic educational piece for intranets. There are so many different ways of being able to get involved. Unofficially supporting some of our leads. So we definitely have a network member who is really active in supporting our lesbian leads within the network. People wanted us to rotate days and times of meetings. We've always done that. We don't have the national meetings on a recurrence. Our safer spaces are not on a recurrence either. We mix it up just so that people that may be working different working hours and compressed hours and all of that kind of stuff, so that they are able to make some meetings some of the time. In addition to that, we had a lot of feedback around the previous legacy NHSE network, that it didn't welcome allies, or that actually other people from within the community didn't feel welcomed there. And this is, again, one of the things that has been one of my focus since coming in as chair of the network, that we need to really ensure that all members feel consulted and listened to, and everybody's encouraged into those network spaces. We have had a few bumps and issues. We have had some of our own members leak information from our network space out to the media. So we've had stories that run in the Telegraph, in the Daily Mail. Periodically, our network will appear in any of those rags. And it's sad and it's unfortunate that some of our own members are using that as a way to achieve what, I'm not sure, because they're definitely not speaking to us about it. And because of that, we've recently had to introduce some updated rules of engagement. We're trying as much as possible, as we always can, to try and keep all of our members safe.
That is just extraordinary. I'm going to do the last bit first, because go back 20 seconds if you missed it, right? So, in other words, there are members in their network who have leaked stories to the Telegraph and the Daily Mail, both of which, by the way, are rags. So, in other words, if you happen to think that the Telegraph writes excellent articles or that their political leanings are correct for you, you're not welcome here. Rags. She called them rags. Now it gets better, right? It gets better. And then she says after that, the revelation that people have been reporting her and her vile group to the Telegraph and the Daily Mail, she says, to achieve I don't know what, and I don't know why, because they're not talking to us. That is absolute cognitive dissonance right there. She daren't look. She daren't look. She daren't try to discover why that is happening, because if she does, the entire thing falls to pieces. So that's why I'm doing the last bit first. Do you agree with me on this? Play it again if you have to. Go back, 35, 40 seconds. Play it again. Do you think that's what's happening there? Members are reporting us to the Telegraph and the Daily Mail, which are rags, but they're trying to achieve I don't know, and I've no reason to understand why, but they're not talking to us. Do it. Doesn't understand why people aren't talking to her when they are the most authoritarian movement the world has ever seen since 1945. Just the Western world, anyway. So, tell me what you think, because I think that is pure cognitive dissonance at work. Not only that, notice the bottom left slide. She didn't say it. She didn't actually say it, but it's on the damn slide. Look at that. Gender critical views are not welcomed. Whoa. What does that mean? Is that illegal? Perhaps the Free Speech Union should take this up. Is that illegal? This was 2 weeks ago, by the way. 2 weeks ago. We are post-Forstater. Really, seriously, post-Forstater. Gender critical views are not welcome. So, in other words, we will exclude people that have gender critical views. Is it me, or have they just broken the Equality Act? I need to know. Somebody give Toby a prod, Toby Young, or the guys on GB News. This needs to be on GB News. They're actually specifically saying that they will exclude people with gender critical views. Or are they? Or is it just that you're not welcomed? How will not being welcomed look? What will you do? Somebody comes into the room of one of your, this is the funny bit, one of your pop-up safe spaces that only happen randomly. There are no times for these safe spaces. They happen randomly. How does that work? Is there a button? Is there an app? So there's a member of staff some bloke flitting around in a bloody skirt and lipstick and hair, pouting at his camera in the toilet, right? Some bloke wandering around, and all of a sudden he hears somebody call him a man. Does he like press a button and a klaxon goes off? Is that what happens? And all of a sudden a safe space pops up. It's like, you know, the room of requirement in Harry Potter, but for people who have lesbian needs. Can't get this is absolutely surreal on an unbelievable level. Is that what it is? So, oh my God, somebody just called me a man. Press his button, yeah? All of a sudden, all these LGBTQ nutters and BIPOC people turn up, and there's a room. Safe space. You're not wearing any kind of scent, are you? No. Come on in. Tell me this isn't real. I don't want it to be, but it is real. It is real. In addition to that, at the very beginning of this particular excerpt, what we saw was you should stand up and you should evangelize. You should stand up and evangelize. Tell your story. Go and proselytize to the people. We'll help you do that. It's a cult, for God's sake. And they don't even know they're in it. Gender critical views are not welcomed. Legal or illegal? And with that absolute doozy, I'm going to make this a short one because I think that's where we need to leave it. Somebody who has a contact in the Free Speech Union, Toby, GB News, Talk, whoever it is, Judy Hartley Brewer, I don't give a damn. This is the NHS, 2 weeks ago, saying that gender critical views are not welcomed. This needs taking up. Let's hope it does get so. Taken up, I mean. Other than that, goodbye. Go and do something else. I can't do any more today because I'm just so busy. I'll see you later. Come be a war teacher, buy me a coffee, the usual stuff. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye, folks. Have a good day. Hello. Beep, 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 beep. We're back with more NHS shenanigans and doodads from the network. Let's go.
And these are some of the things that we just don't have capacity to do. So people said that we should be tackling health inequalities training for everybody in the NHS, especially those within the LGBTQIA plus community. Totally agree that should be happening. That's really beyond our remit. The best that we can do is lobby and support the organisation in putting that on. I think that remit really sits within the patient equalities team and the LGBT health team. And we have connections with that team and will continue to work with them. People said that we should also be changing the language and definitions that are used within NHS England. I would love to be able to have that influence and power. Unfortunately, I don't, particularly around inclusive language, because it is one of the things that I will go on about a lot. So the best that we can do is we will continuously lobby the organisation to use more inclusive language, but it really isn't within our gift to be able to demand or put into place. To respond robustly to policy and practice changes that impact the treatment of LGBTQIA plus patients. Again, for us, particularly in NHS England, our focus is around our workforce. So we are a staff network that's lobbying for better inclusion for our own workforce. And if we kind of get that right, it would mean by default that that's going to have a positive impact on LGBTQIA plus patients. But again, this currently sits beyond our remit. And I think that kind of sits probably more with networks that are based in trusts, but we would definitely support in any way that we could. I've just mentioned about people wanting that sort of greater pastoral care and support. So we're kind of looking at that. But again, there'll be limitations around what we're able to offer. We can't offer counselling because we're not trained counsellors, and we definitely wouldn't be able to give advice around addiction issues. We would only be able to signpost in those particular situations, but there will be situations where we are able to deliver support. And then somebody else or several other people, and this came up again recently, wanting to make sure that there's mandatory training on not just LGBTQIA plus inclusion, but trans awareness, microaggressions, and other EDI related sessions. Again, not within my gift to be able to make the organisation do, but we are continuously lobbying around all of that stuff.
So there you have it. Here we go. Right, so just honest to God, tackling health inequalities training for all, especially within the LGBTQI plus community. Now, what Mel stated here is that they don't have any ability to influence any of this, but this is the sort of thing that came out of their staff survey. I'm trying to understand tackle health inequalities training for all, especially within the LGBTQIA plus community. Right, so I'm desperately trying to think. Now, with the exception of the I, which is people with DSDs who have specific, very individualized care needs, which I'm sure we absolutely deal with already, what the hell do they mean? How is an asexual any different from somebody who's normal? Come on, tell me, because I don't know. Do you know? I have no idea. What? Now, I'm a gay man, right? I have health needs, certain ones. And I go in and go, here, play it up. And they deal with me. Why? What health needs do I have that are different? I don't know. What are they saying? That we have specific health needs like HIV/AIDS? What is that? What they're talking about? Actually, that's something that affects everybody, and it affects heterosexuals at the moment more than it does homosexuals. I don't know what they're after here. Is it about specific needs for lesbians? What's specific? No, it doesn't mean any of that, does it? What does it mean? It means giving free rein to trans and non-binary. That's what it means. To have any surgeries they want, so the men can get the titty skittles and the women can mutilate their breasts and then everybody can mutilate their genitals. That's what it means. It's guff of the first order. And what can they do? Well, that's interesting. They can highlight the ongoing health inequalities. I'd like to see a list. But this sits within the remit of patient equalities team and LGBT health team. Hang on a sec, right? So we've now got another two groups. It's just surreal. They're like sort of twisted mutant rabbits. They're breeding. Patient equalities team and the LGBT health team. Right. Another team. What are they doing? Are they doing training? Are they encouraging outside people from outside the NHS to come and get involved with our nice little cozy #BeKind group of weirdos? Is that what they're doing? So in other words, they can't do anything about it, but they'll continue to maintain connection with the LGBT health team. Is it just one team, or is there multiple teams? Is there different teams in every trust? How many people are involved in these teams, and are these teams doing things on NHS time? It just gets better, doesn't it? Eh? It's just, how big is this boondoggle? We need a doge. They need doging. That's what they need. Right, what about this next one, which is a beauty? Change language and definitions used within NHS England with guidance available. Apparently Mel bangs on about this a lot. I wonder why Mel bangs on about this a lot. Could it be that she was responsible for the pregnant person training? I wonder. Go and have a look. Tell me, right? They want to change language. So in other words, they want to do away with the concept of sex altogether so they can bring about their gender utopia. That's what they're doing. They thankfully don't have the power to do that, but obviously they're influencing. We continuously lobby on inclusive language. However, this is not within our power to change. Thank God. Thank God, because you and your cohort are insane. They continue to lobby about inclusive language and definitions. Right? I want to see the definitions. They've got to be around somewhere. And then they respond robustly to policy and practice changes that impact the treatment of LGBTQI patients. For now, we are a staff network. For now, we are a staff network lobbying for better inclusion for our own workforce. This sits beyond our current remit. We support other teams and organisations for the advancement of patient care best practice. Right, get your head around this, okay? So what they're saying is, for now, we are a staff network. They give it away in their very speech. She talks constantly about lobbying. This isn't a staff network, is it? It's just not. This is an agitating lobby group at the heart of the NHS that we're paying for. It just gets worse. Then they want, this is what was asked by the staff survey, greater pastoral support tailored for LGBTQI colleagues such as counselling, including addiction issues. What? Are you telling me that there are people with addiction issues? They better not be on the front line. We got some stoned bloke in surgery. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think that there's probably people that do have addiction issues. What the hell has that got to do with their employer? Counselling service. They want the employer to provide all this. This has to stop. It's not only is it wickedly political, it's deeply and perversely therapeutic. Right? Committee members are not currently trained on giving pastoral support, no, but you think you're trained on giving psychosocial interventions. And then they want to ensure mandatory training on LGBTQI inclusion, trans awareness, microaggressions, and other EDI-related sessions. Here comes your critical race theory and your unconscious bias and all the other bullshit that comes with EDI and DIE. Can you see it yet? Please tell me you can. We continuously lobby on making training available. However, this is not within our power to instigate, which is really weird. Then what's the point of you? And who's qualified to do this training? The more we look, the darker it gets. Onwards, people. Onwards.
And, we're doing all of this stuff, all of that, all those action plans, all these bits of work that we're doing it. Why are we doing it? Well, let's look at our staff survey results, and that will tell you why it's really important that networks are active and are doing these pieces of work. So if we look at the staff survey results for NHS England, I provided a link. I suggest that you kind of go and have a look. It breaks it down by demographic. You just have to scroll through pages and pages. But if you look for the demographic breakdown towards the end of the document, you will then be able to see what it is like for people alongside the majority of the organisation. And so what those results show us is that trans and non-binary colleagues are having a worse experience than other colleagues. And then it's followed by LGB, but it definitely trans and non-binary. And obviously we all know the issue with ESR, the fact that our trans colleagues, even if they wanted to share that information, are not even able to at the moment. And, when we're talking about being in an organisation that's inclusive, where people can be themselves, where they're valued, psychological safety, all these stuff that we talk about in terms of EDI, if at the very basic level, you can't see yourself represented in the sort of demographic sharing stuff on an HR framework, then something's really wrong. I know we have real challenges around this. We don't own it. It's owned by the Department of Health and Social Care, and it's not on their list of priorities to change. I know it's complicated, but it's still an issue.
This is extraordinary. I mean, they're now moving on to the staff survey results, which I'll cover in more depth next month. Tomorrow. Oh, I really am losing the plot, folks. God help me. Buy me a coffee. Come be a warrior teacher. Keep me bloody going. And subscribe and like and share, please. Right? Staff survey results. Apparently, trans and non-binary people are getting a worse experience, followed by LGB. Right? Okay. So trans and non-binary. Why are they getting a worse experience? Do you think it's possible that lying about who you are, pretending you're something you are not, making demands that nobody gives a toss about, might make you more unpopular? I suppose it might be. That's like a bully at school moaning because nobody likes him. I mean, they're the worst bullies there are. So this is, we've been bullying people and they don't like us. Or it's possible that they're being bullied by somebody else, in which case it should be dealt with. But I doubt very much that they're getting a worse experience because they're all worried about their microaggressions. Has anybody not been watching the ridiculous up to no good trial on Twitter? You can see the degree of my minuscule grievance these people will take if they can. I mean, that bloke was keeping a list of microaggressions in a book, so he could add them all up as if they then become something and blame Peggy. Sandy Peggy. It's absolutely beyond me. So they're working on the basis that a self-reported survey says they're having a worse time. Are they? What's the matter, guys? Can't get the titty skittles? What's the matter, girls? Gay men not accepting you? Of course you're having a worse experience. You're pretending to be something you're not. Ugh. LGB, well, we're a whingy bunch anyway. That's not true. God knows. I haven't looked to the depth of it. But it's available if you want to go and have a look, Then it begins. Right, and then we have to deal with psychological safety. Well, that's all that nonsense comes in then. But here's the interesting bit. The ESR, they're not recognised as trans and non-binaries on the ESR. Now, the ESR, for those that don't know, is the electronic staff record. In other words, they want to be able to falsify their sex and falsify who they are on the NHS electronic staff record. That's what they're calling for. Well, we can't influence it. It's owned by somebody else. Thank God. Right, so what essentially this LGBTQI plus network is calling for is people to be able to falsify who they are on the official NHS record. The same as the GMC have been doing. Excuse me. same as the GMC have been doing. And then we have to do psychological safety and all this stuff we talk about, says Mel. Yeah, EDI and DEI. It's an unbelievably vile belief system. Well, that's enough for you to get your head round today, I think. There'll be more tomorrow, as usual. So please do buy me a coffee if you can. If you're enjoying the series, please help out. Remember, there's now a playlist on the YouTube channel. Please like, select, but most of all, let's share the hell out of this, because this needs to be on the news. It needs to be out there, folks. Well, at least that's what I think. But then I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I'm a narcissistic, attention-seeking twat. Off you pop, nutters. Bye. Hello. Beep, 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 beep. Yep, more from the NHS. Oh, good, you can beep, 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 IIA. Plus, bum pipe for your enjoyment. It just keeps getting better. Watch, subscribe, buy me a coffee, the usual. Click like, notifications, all the doodads you have to do. I'll see you in a minute. Go on, watch.
And then let's look at some of the findings from the wider NHS staff survey. You've probably seen this stuff already. So we already know that about 1 in 20 of NHS staff identifies as LGBTQIA+. You can see on the screen at the moment the percentages of how LGBTQIA staff are more likely to be experiencing bullying and harassment and discrimination in comparison to heterosexual colleagues, and it obviously widens as we get to people that are trans and non-binary. So in terms of bullying and harassment, 23% for heterosexual staff, 32% gay and lesbian, 34% for bi, 35% for trans. Really big margins difference there. Unwanted sexual behaviour from other colleagues, 3.4% for heterosexual staff. And again, you're seeing those percentages going up to a whopping 15% for transgender staff. I think there's one more. Yes, there's one more. So, and then in terms of LGBTQIA plus staff, they're less likely to recommend the NHS as a place to work. Again, I think pretty obvious margins there. And then back to that sort of 1 in 20, 1 in 5 LGBTQIA plus people working in the NHS are considering leaving. We know from within our own network, I've had people stand down from our committee who feel like they can't continue in their roles because they don't feel safe in this organisation, in who they are. So specifically trans and non-binary folk.
Well, there we are. I'm back. So here we go. This is all about the NHS staff survey. So it's worth taking a look at this and see what Melanie is saying, because everybody seems to be so unsafe and so unhappy. I'm surprised they stay at all. So here we go. 1 in every 20 NHS staff identifies as LGBTQ+. It says LGBTQ+ there. Melanie said LGBTQ plus AI+. So is she talking about the same thing? I don't know. She adding bits in that don't exist? Who knows? God only knows. But you can see there that 1 in every 20 staff identify. You don't identify as gay or lesbian or bisexual. You are. There's no identification about it. It's got nothing to do with identity. It's a simple fact. It is an immutable characteristic, i.e., I'm a fag, pufter, shirt lifter, uphill gardener. Right? It's just me. Just part of me. Whereas, of course, the trans, non-binary, queer stuff is all, they pick that. Interesting, isn't it? So 0.4% identify as transgender, 6% prefer not to say. How do you identify as transgender? Turn up in a pair of skimpy knickers and a shirt, and then I prefer not to say. Are you trans? I prefer not to say. Surreal, isn't it? Surreal. 2.3% were bisexual. Well, make it your minds, will you? I'm kidding. 2.6% lesbian or gay. That's low. Anyway, there you go. Right, because it's fairly constant across wherever country you go, wherever you look, and across history, it's fairly constant. So this is all about they experience bullying and harassment, discrimination, and unwanted sexual behaviour compared to their heterosexual colleagues. Do they? God, what's going on in the NHS? My goodness. We have to get to slide 2 for that, don't you? The NHS staff survey 2. Bullying and harassment at work. 35% of transgender staff have had bullying or harassment at work. I find that quite frankly unbelievable. Right? I find it unbelievable. And of course, because it's such a small number, how many responded? We don't. It could be 8 people. Doesn't mean anything. Right? 34% of bisexual staff. What? So in other words, they haven't said what the bullying harassment is, but that's what apparently they're getting. 23% of heterosexual staff. It looks like the LGBTQ plus I nonsense people could be more sensitive, perhaps. Is that anything to do with the microaggression training and the unconscious bias training and the decolonize the curriculums training and all the other rubbish that they're piling on them? And because they're more likely to turn up to it, because obviously it's their ideology, then they're more likely to be bullied and harassed at work in their mind rather than reality. When perhaps they're just told that they're not men when they're not women when they're men, or they're not men when they're women, because that was what they'd see as. But there was a microaggression. She didn't look at me. There was a microaggression. He wouldn't go on a date with me because he's gay. I don't believe it. It's that simple. Self-selected bloody surveys. You know, if you're in a company or an organisation, no matter how big or small it is, having a chinwag with your staff about how things are going is a good idea. These staff surveys never are. You know why? Well, because what it does is it means that you end up, if you're not careful, with the tail wagging the dog. That is, the NHS is run and should be on a basis of a hierarchy of competency and a hierarchy of leadership and power. That's the game. What this does is when you start asking the staff, everybody gets confused. Well, the staff think that you should, put tampons in the men's. Oh, well, we need to have a discussion about that. A discussion that with 10 people at the wages that are paid at the NHS costs a bloody fortune. In other words, what it does is it flattens the hierarchical structure so that it makes it more equal. Really? See it? Equity. Flatten the hierarchical structure. That's the problem the NHS has got. That's the problem it's got. Now, most staff do a brilliant job, as well as I do. And the other thing is, it's worth remembering that when we're talking about the NHS, if you're involved in clinical care, if you're a doctor, a nurse, an anaesthetist, gynecologist, whatever it may be, that you are a professional, right? And I would say that the people that work cleaning are professionals, because it's cleaning at a level that most of us wouldn't even bother with. The ability to work to detail, even in a role that is so vital as cleaning, requires a level of professionalism that most domestic cleaners wouldn't have. These are professional people that you're talking about. So what the hell is going on that they're bullying each other? Or do you think that the LGBTQ crowd, which is the lot that Mel's talking about, are actually just simply not liking the fact that people are pushing back? I'm going with that second assumption. We then move on to the next staff survey, which is this. LGBTQ plus staff are less likely to recommend the NHS as a place to work. So 56% of transgender staff said I won't recommend it as a place to work. But yet 35% of them are being abused. Hello, make it make sense. Make it make sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. 58% of gay and lesbian staff say that they would not recommend it. But yet, 32% of them are getting abused. Right, so how many of them? So there's a good chunk of them, 44% and 42%, that would recommend the NHS. So in other words, is it only the 56 and the 58, the ones that are getting bullied? I don't know, make it make sense. 60% of bisexual staff can't make up their mind. Sorry. There'll be some annoyed bisexuals now. And 63% of heterosexual staff say they are less likely to recommend the NHS as a place. What does less likely mean? So I wonder if there was a tick box that said would not recommend, and I wonder how many said that. So 63% of heterosexual staff that responded to the survey wouldn't recommend working at the NHS. What the hell's going on? What the hell is going on? This is a failing organisation. It's a failing organisation if that's true. It's not though, is it? Because it's self-selected, and it allows for any grievance you like. And the NHS has been teaching people to have grievances for years. I know because I've seen what they're teaching. And I know because I've taught NHS staff. It used to upset the powers that be because I'd teach NHS staff the truth and they didn't like that. Because they'll take something like a psychological idea, right? And they'll just use the bit that shores up their ideology. Whereas I'd go in and do the training for the staff and there'd be 30 of them. And I'd go, right, what's missing is this. It would turn the whole thing on its head. I used to peak people at a rate of knots until they found me out. Now I've got nowhere to work. I do like to disrupt. Right, that's enough for today. Let's keep going, all right? Just keep fighting. Keep going. Keep fighting. I'm finding all this terribly exciting, and I know I shouldn't. All right, buy me a coffee, become a warrior teacher, and the usual. Like, subscribe, and share. More tomorrow. beep, beep. Yep, more from the NHS. Oh, good, you can beep, 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 IIA. Plus, bum pipe for your enjoyment. It just keeps getting better. Watch, subscribe, buy me a coffee, the usual. Click like, notifications, all the doodads you have to do. I'll see you in a minute. Go on, watch.
And then let's add to that the NHS Confederation LGBTQ plus Leaders Network also did a member survey at the back end of last year, which they showed the results of recently. And it's really interesting survey findings, right? Because actually what they found was that all that stuff that I just said to you, well, the picture's actually worse than that. But people don't feel safe to be, even though staff surveys are anonymous, people still don't feel safe to be able to say how they're really experiencing stuff. And there's obviously more trust in the NHS Confed's Leaders Network. So they had 540 members that responded, with 78% of those coming from the community. They found that there's a significantly poorer workplace experience for LGBTQIA plus colleagues, and they're experiencing higher rates of homophobia and transphobia as compared to those NHS staff survey statistics. So here's just a bit of an overview of some of their findings. They found like 25% of respondents said they had experienced direct or indirect homophobia, which is compared to 13% in the NHS staff survey. Biphobia still there at 9%, and then transphobia at 20%.
My goodness me, what an ugly picture is painted here about the NHS, which seems to be one of the worst employers in the world to work for. Extraordinary, considering that I know a number of people who do work for them who find the job rewarding. But this is particularly interesting because we've got another group. It just gets worse. Right, we've now got the NHS Confederation LGBTQ plus group, which is 2,000 people apparently. So this is on top of Mel's boondoggle. This is another boondoggle. Each one of these groups will have a website. Each one of these groups will have a set budget. What the hell is going on? No, so they did their own survey, their separate survey. I wonder if that's because they didn't like the original one. Might be, mightn't it? You don't know with these people, do they? That doesn't tell us what it wants. I don't know. Don't use that one. Why not? Because it doesn't tell us what we need. What do you need? Grievance. Lots of grievance. So our Health and Care LGBTQ Plus Leaders Network has published new survey findings. Gosh, not another survey, which shows that LGBTQ Plus staff across health and care are continuing to experience greater levels of discrimination in the workplace. Over 540 network care members responded. What the hell? Working at all levels. And the remaining 22% responding as allies. Allies? Right, well, okay, right. It's just nonsense. The network, which represents over 2,000 LGBTQ plus, they've got 2,000 of these Fruit Loops working in the NHS in this network alone. Well, that might be some allies as well. Mr. Smith from the Butchers, who likes to gusset fumble once a week. Who is it? Who's included? So this is, the findings show that continue to have significant homophobia and transphobia compared to the NHS staff survey. So now the NHS staff survey is wrong. I feel like I'm descending into a hole of lunacy. Then we get the survey findings coming up here now. They disclosed higher rates of direct or indirect homophobia, slightly higher rates of transphobia, and less biphobia. What is the point of all this? What they were worried about, though, was the organisation's ability to respond to incidents swiftly and appropriately. Really? Interesting. So 25% said they'd experienced direct or indirect homophobia, compared to 13% in the NHS staff survey. It doesn't mean anything. She sat here rattling off. None of it means anything. It's just rubbish. 9% of survey respondents have experienced direct or indirect biphobia, and 20% of survey respondents experienced direct or indirect transphobia. Direct or indirect, is it? Direct or indirect? I tell you this now. I've worked across business, I've worked voluntary, I've worked in every sector there is, public sector, private sector, and I'm a puff, right? And I've been a puff all my life, except You know, everybody knew, but nobody talked about it. It was those days were like, but when I go anywhere, I've got friends who are at work, they very rarely experience homophobia now. This is insane. What's wrong with the NHS? It's completely, utterly bankrupt as far as people's morality is concerned. Or these people are just full of shit. I know which I'm going with. Again, which I'm going with. Here's the bit she didn't read out. Right? Here's the bit she didn't read out. Only 14% of respondents felt their organisation responded swiftly. She might have read this out, actually. This highlights an urgent need for NHS leaders to... Right, no, she didn't. She ignored this bit. So let's go on to the next bit. The next slide came up after she mentioned the 20%. But here's the kicker. Here's the bit that you need to watch for, because this is what these swine are up to. This highlights an urgent need for NHS leaders to fully embed LGBTQ+ inclusion within their workplaces and ensure that policies are acted on and fully communicated to all staff. Acted on. This is a dangerous game they're playing. This is a dangerous game, but it gets worse. I know I know you can't stand anymore. I know you're on your knees with despair, but believe me, it gets worse. Let's hear some more.
This is into this, right? So you may have heard about minority stress. I'm not going to spend loads of time talking about it. I just kind of use this infographic to kind of give people, like, if you stand back and take a look at it. And minority stress can be experienced by anybody from a marginalised group. So this isn't just LGBTQIA+, but that's the focus of this session. So this will be for our colleagues that work in the NHS, but this will also be relevant to anybody else who accesses our services. So, you know, across the board, when people experience minority stress, they're experiencing higher levels of prejudice and discrimination and events on a more daily basis. They have higher expectations that they're going to experience prejudice and discrimination. There are those higher levels of covering, concealing who they are. And again, we know that's in the workplace, but we also know that patients hide this information as well because they don't feel safe to come out to healthcare professionals. And then what that can then result in is this internalization of societal stigma. I'm not going to talk through that whole infographic, but what it shows you is that as those elements of minority stress impact on somebody on a daily basis, what can actually start to happen is it starts to have repercussions on people's health, mental health, but also health. So if you then look to the boxes that are on the far right-hand side, these are like the potential clinical outcomes that people who are experiencing minority stress are more likely to develop. And you can see it's listed there for yourself. So they're more likely to develop heart disease or cancer or diabetes, all these different health conditions that will be exacerbated by this minority stress. And this is why it's really important that we're looking at the inequalities that our colleagues are experiencing. We're looking at the inequalities that exist within the NHS, and they do. You would have seen this data before. I really wish somebody somewhere would update and do some more recent research and data so that we're not always relying on Stonewall's LGBT in Britain reports from 2018. But this is where we're at. So we know that LGBTQIA+ people are already more likely to experience poor mental health, self-harm, suicidal ideation, hate crime, so-called conversion therapy, inappropriate cancer screening. They're going to have less access to services. And that was before the pandemic. And what we do know that there is enough research that shows that the pandemic did adversely affect our particular community. So this data, it will not have gotten better since 2018. It will have only have gotten worse. Just to pick a couple out that I always think it's just really shocking. 40% of lesbian and bi women were told by a healthcare professional that they didn't need a cervical screening because they weren't having heterosexual penetrative sex, I'm assuming. And that 1 in 50 who asked for a screening were then refused by a healthcare professional. 1 in 7 have avoided seeking treatment because they don't feel safe. 1 in 5 aren't out to their healthcare professional about their sexual orientation. 15% of disabled people have experienced discrimination. It goes on and on. If you want to read a little bit more about some of this stuff, so when the slide decks come out, these are all hyperlinked, so you should be able to just click on them and it should take you through to the report. So the LGBT in Britain report was slightly updated in 2020 by the Hidden Figures, but it was a report that was done on like the first 6 months, I think, of the pandemic, but nothing since then. You've got the one in the middle is a really good one, and that kind of came out mid last year, and what they've done is they've kind of gathered all of the other kind of research and scoping evidence that's out there around the social detriments of LGBT health and well-being. Some really great stuff from the LGBT Leaders Network, from NHS Confed, the GLAD and BMA report around people in the medical profession and the levels of discrimination that they're facing. Really worth a read of that. The National Institute for Health and Care Research there's some really lovely recommendations in there about how to improve communication.
Absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable, unmitigated rubbish being taught as clinical fact. This is exactly what we're seeing here. Now, we saw previously in that little bit we've had already about the Confederation, but now this takes on a whole new level of insanity. This is the introduction of something called minority stress, which is a theory that's just bullshit. Everybody's a minority of one. Your stress is your problem, right? Even if that means you've got to talk to your boss, still your problem. Minority stress. You have to understand what is happening here and how these people view the public, right? So I say this to the warrior teachers all the time. I think it's important that we get it out there. These people that support this, the EDI, DEI, LGBTQ, critical social justice, critical race theory, this bloody neoliberal hard left lunatics, they think we're all poorly, right? Because we don't think like they do. They think we're all poorly. We're unwell as far as they're concerned because we don't think like they do, right? Which is exactly what happened with Marxism. Even though this isn't Marxism itself, it's got a Marxist framework, power and oppression. They think we're unwell, right? So in other words, we haven't developed the same consciousness as them. Therefore, we must be forced to do it. And they're now starting with the blackmail, the typical behavior of a cult, the blackmail. Right, the emotional blackmail. That's what this minority stress stuff is about. So what she's saying is, experience of prejudice, discrimination, blah, 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 concealment, blah, 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 internalization of societal stigma and all the crap that comes with it, coping responses. And she's then saying that there's an epigenetic changes in transcriptional regulation. They're actually saying this changes your body. They're actually saying this affects the DNA in your cells. Now, I need a doctor to tell me that I'm right about that. Allostatic overload, HPA access. This is absolute unmitigated bullshit. What they've taken is the idea of stress, extreme stress, not, oh, I'm having a bad day because somebody won't call me a woman. Extreme stress, which is what they've done with PTSD, right? That's what they've done with PTSD. They've made it something that everybody can have, right? Instead of something that's very serious. They're doing the same thing here with severe stress. They're saying that any stress, minority stress, any stress, which is actually, by the way, good for you, any stress can cause inflammation, immune function, cardiovascular function, metabolic function, and endocrine and hormonal function problems, and the list goes on. So they are saying, because we aren't dealing with the demands of the LGBTQ+, that it will cause people to have cancer, heart disease, HIV, viral load, cell count, susceptibility to virus and bacteria, treatment side effects. What are you going to do? You're treating people for not believing in your bullshit? This is dangerous stuff, folks. I mean, we're trammeling towards the end now. This is dangerous stuff. So apparently it causes diabetes. If I won't recognize that a man is a woman, and that person will then have diabetes because I don't do it. This is insane cobblers. And it's under the banner of NHS England, and it's being taught by somebody who is in no way qualified to do any of this. None of it. It's infuriating how bad this is. Absolutely beyond the pale nonsense. And they then pull up Stonewall's bloody survey from 2018, which has been debunked a dozen times, quickly followed by, as you can see there, the LGBT in Britain health report from Stonewall. And not only from Stonewall, they've then got GLAD to throw into the mix as well. Those absolute clowns that work with the BMA. Well, there you go, folks. I thought a break, I was getting so angry. But there you go, folks. There's everything that I've got. Then we do have another addition to this on the end of me whittering on now, which is if you want to see the 10-minute discussion that takes place after this event, which is visited by a number of people, and you'll see some of the people from the NHS there. One of the main players seems to be, he says, somebody called Catherine Frances Brown. I don't know anything about Catherine other than she's the income delivery lead at NHS England and seems to be involved in EDI. So you'll see her talk about the fact that she's just been writing something for the cabinet. Interesting, isn't it? Other than that, thank you so much if you followed the entire series. What I will do tomorrow is I'll have the entire thing in one file, and I'll just put that up in case people want to watch it all in one go. To all of my supporters, thank you so much for keeping me going. If you can buy me a coffee, do, but most of all, come and be a warrior teacher. Other than that, back to business as usual tomorrow. I'll find someone else to take the mickey out of. I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
And I think that brings me to the end. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has. You have me for the next 10 minutes or so. Unless I've just stunned you all into absolute silence, which is what usually happens whenever I'm delivering something.
Do you mind popping your your details are there already?
Catherine.
Catherine.
Put it into chat.
Hi guys, apologies for missing a majority of the meeting. I got stuck on a ministerial submission that dragged on and on and on. Thank you, Mel, that was amazing. How do we make it better in our organisation? Does that make sense? So we've looked at all these horrible issues that are going on. How do we start to make it better?
I think each organisation needs to have an action plan, and we need to make sure that we're holding our senior leaders to account on it. I think from my experience, if I speak very honestly in this space, is that I think that trusts have way more flexibility and room for manoeuvre in some of this stuff than we do at NHS England. At NHS England, we are absolutely bound to, there's that immediate dotted line into the Department of Health and Social Care. Everything is political, big P and little p. And so we have way more challenges. I think that NHS England should be setting standards and leading the way. They have different ideas, and so we're at this kind of stalemate. So I think it's about being able to make connections across trusts. So those trusts that are doing the work, that are having positive results from having good action plans and having a commitment from senior leaders to actually do the work, is trying to get them to make sure that they're sharing with everybody else what's working for them. It's got to be buy-in from the top, because without it, the stuff that we then try to do is not going to reach anywhere. It sounds like a really obvious thing, but it's the no-brainer. You kind of need to look at staff survey results. What is it telling you, and what do we need to do to fix it? And then just get on with doing the things that we need to do to fix it. How do we make it a safer space for people from more marginalised communities? Does that answer the question, or did you want something more sort of deeper, in depth from me?
No, thank you. I think you've actually nailed it. As an NHS England employee, I completely understand where you're coming from, and coming from a trust background where it was actively encouraged to set up the network, and the board really got behind it. It's been a real cultural shift coming here actually, and seeing almost completely the polar opposite. So totally agree with what you're saying about top down. So yeah, I think we've got a cultural shift that we need to have here, I think, as well. But I'll shut up and let other people talk.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And actually, where we're currently at is we're not even on an even playing field. We're not at the starting line. We got moved back 100 paces by the last government. So what I saw behind the scenes for the last year and a half is the government attacking a lot of work that was being done within NHS England around stuff to do with our community, pieces of work that were halted, that weren't progressed. And senior leaders were pushed into the corners, into the dark corners, and they're still scared to come out and step out into the light, even though we have a change of government. I mean, I'm not saying that the current government is perfect, because it's not, but they're at least have stopped the culture war that was kind of going on. And that 18 months that the last government had of attacking us has pushed us back, and we're now way behind, and we need to catch up before we can even start to move things forward. Hi, Chris.
Hi, thanks, Melanie. I was going to ask about that in particular, actually, just whether you got a sense that there was any improvement, or is it at best, the thumb screws aren't being tightened anymore, I suppose, and clearly, not necessarily internally, but as far as patient care is concerned, there have been some things which have been worse, since the summer, than even before. So that's a frightening thought. But I just wondered, in terms of that. So I work for an ICB, so it's we're kind of in between, as we are separate. But if NHSE breathes in hard, everyone starts panicking and runs and hides under their desks. So it's kind of similar in that sense, but maybe not quite so direct. I'm just wondering, if you sense any sort of shift, in the overall mood and confidence of people in leadership positions, or whether they're
I want to say yes, Chris. I want to say yes so badly, but I'm yet to see it, if I'm honest. And I'm not always in the right spaces in terms of my day job as well. I'm at a lower banded level. I don't get into some spaces that I would like to. I did have a conversation a little while ago with Michael Brady, who heads up the LGBT health team, because I've talked to him a lot over the last year and a half, and some of the difficulties that we've both had. And he seemed to think that there was a little tiny ray of hope in some of the conversations that he'd been involved in, and some of the work that was kind of being scoped. The fact that there were a group of people allocated at Department of Health and Social Care to actually be looking at action plans around sexual orientation and gender identity, which is a real step forward, right? But I haven't seen it past hearing it from Michael, if that makes sense. So it hasn't reached our senior leaders. And so I do believe that they are still stuck in the shadows. They are still scared to come out. At the end of the day, if we're being perfectly honest, there have been previous secretaries of state that have threatened people with stuff. So it's no surprise that they have been scared into the shadows. And I think they just don't know that it's safe yet to come out. And so I think it is our job to help to coax them out and let them know that, because I think they've just taken advantage of that breathing space from the culture war, but that's not enough, right? It's how do we repair the damage from all of that? So no. Like I say, if you take the workplace equality standard I've heard it mentioned for over 2 years, that it's kind of been in conversations. It was then kind of allocated to WTE policy team, and they were holding it for a while, but then the budget got removed, and there was this and there was that, and now it's kind of possibly being moved on to another team. Even if I saw that work actually start, that might give me a little bit of, okay, now we're stepping out of it. But whilst all of this stuff still continues to be on hold, whilst the organisation continues to not develop any kind of action plan or progress any of this stuff, I don't feel that positive about it, if I'm totally honest. I'm not seeing enough being said or done in those spaces to start having those conversations and moving stuff forward, unfortunately.
I feared that might be your answer, but it's useful to have it anyway. So thanks for that, Melanie.
Doesn't mean that we stop doing what we do, right?
No, of course not.
It just means that we kind of go into gear and we just continue to just push and push and push. But it's hard. It's hard because I do sometimes feel like I'm just banging my head against a wall some of the time. But we just have to keep on keeping on, right?
NHSE leadership generally is not necessarily best known for standing up to a pressure from above.
Absolutely.
I know you need to hop off, Melanie. There are some things in the chat if you've had a look over on them. Just a few questions, but also just a few comments as well.
Yeah, leaking stuff to the media has been pretty awful. I'm not going to lie, because what those network members have done, and if we're perfectly honest, they are a network member, because the stories that have run have been, and they've then had quotes from gender critical activists out there. So this is how I know that it's gender critical members that will have leaked that information. And what makes me really sad about that is that because what they've done now is that they've made all of our network space is now unsafe. And so any meeting that we're in at any point, we know that there is this possibility, despite the rules of engagement and whatever else, is that anybody could share anything at any time. And it makes me sad. I feel it's very underhand. It's very difficult to manage as well. The best way that I know how to manage it is that I'm always honest, I'm upfront, I'm transparent, I talk about it all of the time. I try to take wind out of the sails. I'm starting to preempt when we're going to put something out, when I anticipate that there will be somebody who's going to oppose it in some way, shape or form, and then try to prepare for it to make sure that our ducks are in a row before we kind of go out there. The main thing is, so what normally happens when something goes out to the media, more often than not, it will go onto social media. Someone will tag a minister, then the Department of Health and Social Care are then getting in touch with us at NHSE saying, what's this all about? And then we're having to answer questions back up the chain. And that's frustrating. But what my general feeling around it is that it's normally a bit of a stink for 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, they've run their next story and they're on to the next person or next, issue or whatever it is. And everything then stops. So the last story that was run was just before Christmas, was about our safer spaces. It was such a non-story to start with. They were kind of suggesting that LGBTQIA plus colleagues sit around all day in meetings that have no end time, talking about their sexual orientation and their gender identity. I mean, if only, right, that we were able to do that. But this is the kind of nonsense that we're up against. I share it with members and I just say, yeah, be aware, this has come out, but we're not, what it tells me is that we're doing stuff we're doing the right stuff. If someone feels so strongly they want to leak a non-story out to the media to try to cause problems, that tells me we're doing things in the right way. We just continue to get on with it. The only thing that I can't really come up with an idea of how to conclude it is, how do I make that space safe? I can't. And that's what really bothers me about that. Anything else? In terms of an EDI group, I mean, I definitely have some guidance that I can send to Tash that I've written previously in my day job around setting up a staff network, but you could apply it to an EDI network as well. So just some sort of best practice ideas of the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about. More than happy to share those. I might just need to have to tidy them up really quickly before I send them to Tash, but I'm happy to do that for Tash to then circulate for you. Is there anything else before I do need to drop off? If you have any other questions, I stuck my email address into the chat. I'm more than happy if you want to reach out to me on a one-to-one. If you think of a question at a later point, anything that you think that the network or I can support you with, I'm always happy to do it. And just really want to thank you, Tasha, for asking me in to be able to do this and talk about our network and the stuff that we're trying to do. It's stuff that I am so passionate about and really want to try to move things forward along with everybody else. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie, so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone else. Thanks.
No worries. I'll see you soon.